Here, yeah. So just give me 2 seconds. It should be up in just a moment, and then have you take it away. Ryan, do I need to do anything for the? You're already signed in, right? Just for the Zoom stuff. Just to make sure.
Should be good.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Just give me 1 second, Yulia, and then hand it over to you.
How far can I go around?
Just to make sure.
Cool.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the mic is right here. So if you can feel free to go in this general area. But cool.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And then for controlling here, just use these arrow keys here. So let's
Perfect.
give it up for Yulia. Both have it.
I feel like superstar. Anyway, it's not very long commute as soon as you live in New York State, right? You used to drive a long distance. Okay, I learned that it's supposed to be more my story, and I didn't prepare it as my story. So here I am. I'm single mom of two grown-up, beautiful girls, and I'm actually studying computer science 30 years ago. And my career was like changing all around, and I ended up to be project manager, and I achieved like high level positions and influence back in Russia. So I was like in charge for entire internet in Russia. And then magic happens. Love came, and I had to relocate to US and start everything from the scratch, start everything from the zero. And first of all, I was like, okay, here I am, so cool one with all the background, all this technology background, and just changing career, just really slowly transitioning. And it's hard to position myself here, newcomer. Who am I, right? What can I offer to this such a developed market with so many technology companies? So it took about 2 years for me to find my tribe, because I just said that's what I want. I want to find my tribe. And New York State is very rural area, as you know probably. It's hard to find technologists, people who are doing technology, any kind of. And I was like, along. Okay. Okay. We can hear you. Welcome to the so I discovered the Meetup as a tool. I started to learn what people are doing using Meetup, and I was brave enough to physically show up. And it was the eye-opening for me. And it's happened. It probably was the right moment to show up. It's not only me who decided to show up first time. So many people came, and we learned to each other. We learned each other. We found this wow effect. You probably learned it already. It's in your territorial, protecting the turf. I'm doing this already, whatever business it is. If you say agriculture, real estate, I don't know, consultants, all of these things, food, retail, we're already here, we're already doing this. Who are you, newcomer? Protecting the turf, right? Territorial, it's my place, my area. Probably it's rooted into the farming, but it's totally opposite with developer. So that's what I learned, and I was excited to see my tribe. Saying that, I immediately was looking for everything what I found in technology area, and I was trying to narrow myself, who am I, what I'm doing, and I ended up to be a technology community developer. That's my passion. That's what I love to do. I just love my people, and I want them to succeed. And it looks like that's what is needed. So going back to slides and struggling to find my to be hired in specific companies, and there's technology companies in Hudson Valley. Probably you're more blessed in Syracuse, having more technology companies hiring than Hudson Valley is. So you can see with what and they also have, because there's open source, there's a company who is doing open software, and I'm doing OpenHub technology community. People together around technology, creating conditions for collaboration. And you will see the slide how it goes, but what I want to pay your attention to the Hudson Valley map kind of wise or region wise. So it's really long region. Hudson Valley, Hudson River is long river, and the density of population is really low. So you can define cities like Kingston, Newburgh. Those are 25,000, 30,000 people cities, and between those in small villages, so density is really low. Where in Newburgh located, where I'm doing things, just in the middle of Hudson Valley and the crossroads of two highways, 84 and 87. So we are halfway to between New York and Albany. And there is life, technology life in New York and in Albany. And the like assumption was there is no life, no technology life in Mid Hudson Valley at all. Until we started doing things, there is one company, IBM, old-fashioned IBM, which was actually um, how to say it, split to many different directions. So we used to have the headquarter, IBM headquarter in Poughkeepsie, and the company was split, and they just really tried to old-fashioned IBM spirit out there, and they laid off like 90% of people, which really hurted Hudson Valley. All these intelligent patient minds, brains were laid off because the approach was just to sit out, period, and hire new people with new mentality, not so cliquey, not so old-fashioned, whatever it is, but it's hurted the entire region very much. So you got the idea about the landscape. I was, and where we are in the Hudson Valley Can Code. As a result, the two destinations, and there is a more opportunity. You can see probably through these photographs, we have about 40, 50% of women. I'm excited about this, and I have an idea why it is like that. But we will talk about it later. So that's a little bit more perspective how it looks like, what counties we are at. Again, I'm at the border of between Ulster and Orange counties. So the entire things happen here in the center. Three counties are most active: Dutchess, Orange, and Ulster. Whatever is happening either in Kingston or in Poughkeepsie or where active people are, where the density of population is. And if there is educational institutions, because there is no technology businesses, or at least we didn't know about those until we started doing things. So this gives you the idea. I will not read all of these slides, but it gives you the idea why Mid Hudson Valley. You cannot avoid Mid Hudson Valley. You have to be something has to be there, right? And we try to encourage technology companies to do something there. While doing this, we discovered, wow, we do have some technology companies hidden in the bushes or just serving nationwide. And they just don't want to be visible in Hudson Valley specifically because it's not their target market, I would say. They specialize on amazing things, but like really cybersecurity for banks. Do we have so many innovation banks in Hudson Valley or wherever? So they do have headquarters. Banks have headquarters in different areas. So they just target them. So it's all what I'm saying is it's all businesses coming to the cloud or to telecommuting, and location doesn't matter anymore. Seems to be. Still does, because in person, doing things in person, meeting people in person, seeing their eyes, just saying like, hey, you're really doing this? Me too. Let's do it together. It's so important. It's needed. It's like must have if you are a real developer. You do need pair programming. You do need to partner with someone just because you're stuck. And engineers, software engineers as well, they used to get into the rabbit holes. So when you focus on the problem, you dig deep, 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 and you keep losing the entire picture landscape where you're at. And you do need another person saying like, hey, wait a second, come back. Let's start over, or you can do it differently. Wait a second, there is something else to consider. So that's why, I guess, one of the reasons why web development is so in need to collaborate with other people. We do need each other, and we got the energy from each other. So saying that, those facts, which you can see here, listed here, those facts are actually proving the fact that we do need something physically. Local technology community is starving for networking. As soon as we just all together show up and we got this wow effect, people were like, oh, let's do this, let's do that. And multiple meetups started. Literally focusing. First, we were like, hey, let's do HV Tech, Hudson Valley Technology. And this is a huge meetup. Now it's 2,700 people on the list. And for the event, it's monthly event. It's mostly inspirational meetups with 3 amazing speakers. I do have slides for that. Anyway, so HV Tech, actually the events, monthly events with 50 to 100, between 50 and 100 people showing up and hearing the inspirational talks from technologists, period. There are some networking exercises behind it, but not really much outcomes for developers who want to do things. For non-developers, it's wow, we do have technology in Hudson Valley. As soon as you're developers, you come in there and like, hands-on, we want to do something, we want to do, to collaborate, to work together just to deliver something. It's good to be inspired 1 month, next month, but how to do? We want to do something. So that was the reason I decided to do it as a running regular events as the established companies. And I established OpenHub. So that's me right now, right here. So that's the HV Tech. You can see how it looks like. So it's one of the biggest events when we had 100-ish people. And you can see speakers at the stage. Good networking is great. Community announcements. Everyone can jump on the stage and say, hey, I'm hiring. Hey, I'm doing this project. Who wants to join? But it's not really continuing during the event. And people really want to just hang out a little bit, focus on something, and just really ending up with just creating something. I truly believe we're all creators. So we do need something to work on. So here we come. We established coding club in Newburgh. And what it is, how it looks like, all these formats, we just came up, we experimented with different days of the week, with different topics, with different, like, what do we want to do? We ended up to have 2 kinds of activities at the coding club. Once a month, we do have first Monday of the month, one topic presented by a speaker, and we have community discussion after that. People love it. As soon as you have like awesome top-notch speaker, like Docker Kubernetes creator, developer, one of the key people from DigitalOcean came and gave a talk. And the next time some like young developers came and gave a talk about Django, they just discovered the platform. They said like, cool platform, can I share? I want to share, it's so cool. You can do big things so quick. So they varies, that's what I'm saying. You can do very simple stuff, you can do very difficult stuff, and every time you find your audience. You have hundreds of people on the list, you never know who will come, but you see, these needs that, these need that. So I kind of curator of who will speak and just trying to just nurture people to give a talk. When I see students like you or inspired by something and discovered something new, I just like, hey, the best way to learn, come present what you learn, present your project, present whatever you have, and practice your skills. Actually, it gives me the pipeline for my mentorships, but we will get to this later. Sundays, projects, that's where people actually can come together, and it looks like co-working space. I didn't mention before, there is no single co-working space in Mid-Hudson Valley yet. They are coming, they are opening, but lucky you having it. We do need to get together and just looks like with no reason, just come for the coffee and work and see, hey, somebody else is working here, can I see what you're doing? And by the way, do you know how to solve this problem? But then just talk here. Can you have a look on my stuff? Oh, exciting, right? That's how collaboration begins. It's all about energy flow. I don't know, probably it's my background from dancing, but I really believe in energy flow, and collaboration actually creates the energy and gives so much synergy. So those are topics just some sample topics we covered through the Coding Club in Newburgh. And wow factor for me was Hudson Valley is like north-south, very spread it, but I got people even from Pennsylvania and Connecticut coming so far. People from almost from the New York City is coming to my events, and they said like these events are better, these meetups are better because they are specialized, because the crowd is like more warm, very welcoming. Probably that's the regional aspect of this, right? Not New York City, not city people. And also there's something else, I guess, this kind of meeting point when you south, north, east, west, it's good to be in the middle of that. And people come for each other. They know they're attracted to each other. Not because of me, not because of the topic, but because they know they will find this energy, which I referred before. So actually you can see how happy everyone on these photos, and that's actually radiate the spirit we do have. We came with the topic Hudson Valley can code, and it's quite broad topic. We just really want to showcase we do have developers, technologists in Hudson Valley. So I built it as a sequence. You can see the slides where we started, like starting shallow, not very shallow, but kind of loosey format with Coding Club in Newburgh, working together, working like on your own project, but sometimes it's together. Sometimes somebody comes and says, hey, I want to do study jam to learn React Native. Who wants to do it with me? So 2 people get together to do this. And then others interested, hey, how do you do this? How do you do that? Right? And the group is growing like snowball. Or sometimes people just come in working on their project, not like study jams. And then they said like, hey, I would love to showcase. Would you be interested? Yay, of course. And that's also an inspired collaboration because people start to improve it or giving advice or just asking, hey, can I volunteer? You see, collaboration is the secret sauce behind that. Coding Club, then introductory things. We're doing an intro to technology because we want to show there is a technology here to everyone. Sometimes people don't know if they do want to learn technology. They just come out of the curiosity, and it's good to have Newburgh Free Library supporting us becoming like the tech cluster because they're giving so much for the community. They're doing so much for the community. So we put out there like intro to web design, ABC, free classes. People come sometimes as a family, father, mother, and 2 kids, teenagers, and then all boys are interested, and mother like, oh, it's not my stuff. And then parents saying like, wow, we didn't know that our boys are interested in this. Who could know about this, right? But it's happened, and it's like proving them how to choose next steps. So this is free classes things to be consistent because you cannot teach, just give a sense about HTML, CSS through one workshop, right? It's better to have free times. JavaScript the same, UI, UX, love it. That's where you do need hands-on and you see how it flows. You do need free times. Intro to Python, intro to PHP. And sometimes you cannot distinguish where is PHP, where is WordPress, where is it's all applicable. And then people see like in the supply chain, how all this technology transitioned into each other, where they are applicable. And repeating the same topic again and again with different mentors, you get each class from the new perspective. So my introductory courses students coming and taking it again and again with different mentors, and they still learn because it's different perspective. One-time workshops, intro to app development. Wow, it can be done during one workshop. It's rather master class than workshop, right? So again, giving people the idea iOS or Android and just answering their questions, helping them to do the next step. Girls Who Code, it's another program and initiatives happening in Hudson Valley. You can see so many women already participating in this, but girls, there is existing program, of course. There is existing an open curriculum, which you kind of must follow if you do Girls Who Code program. So we did it last year with local nonprofit church, and it was like exciting experience. So we applied to the grant to continue with this. Women in Tech, there is a Google supported program, Women Tech Makers. So you can get a lot of resources out there as well. Sharing these resources is caring, helping to find jobs. Women are so assistive to each other. I just didn't see it in like man tribe yet, but it's getting there. It's definitely getting there. So you see, I built it as a funnel. So you do coding club where people can get together and do their own things and try things, then introductory courses, and then web development bootcamp. We do have web development bootcamp, and we're excited that the local college decided to host it, and now it's growing. So that's what it is. Again, you can see 3 women here. One of my best mentors is self-taught woman, and she is one of the best. She made all mistakes possible on her journey, but now she knows what to teach. And just my students admire her. Saying that, building this as a funnel, all these meetups, events, what we achieve? We achieve the opportunity for people to grow. As soon as they just smell what technology is, they come to coding club, even, oh, I'm nobody, I have no skills, like I'm probably not good enough just to be here. And then they just started to participate. They see, oh, I can digest this. Oh, I can do this. Let me try that. And you see, they just build skills. Sometimes I push them and challenge them to present something what they did. They're like, wow, I can do it. Wow, I have something to share. And everybody, I will tell you the secret, everybody does have something to share. It's sometimes difficult to find what specifically nice to share or needed to be shared. And that's why we have this funnel to try things. Club, introductory series, try. If you will like mentoring, teaching this, if people will like you, so probably you will be a good fit with the web development bootcamp. This was my question to Ryan as well, how he ended up to be mentor. And that's what we're doing with our mentors as well. Absolutely same thing. That's probably the pattern for development. Nice to have assisting each other, seeing the people interested to do this, nurturing them, helping them. Guys, you're blessed to be in the first cohort because you're part of this journey and you will influence this journey for sure. They learn from you, not only you learn from them. That's awesome. My approach is web development bootcamp classes can be taken twice. Why? First, and we split it in different courses. We did like, they can be taken separately. So I have very different audience, very different kind of people. Sometimes I do have autistic people in the class, like, wow, I'm probably not able to teach them. Surprisingly enough, they're really good focused, detail oriented, and they're really good with the code. But they do need to do it in the slow pace. So that's why, and anyway, the course is all too overloaded for sure. And when students just come through each course, 5 weeks each, they're like, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not perfect. I cannot digest everything what you have here. And they are so surprised to learn that they do not need to. So the idea is just being overwhelmed, you get to the speed faster and you pick what your brain wants to pick. And taking it second time, actually, you see, wow, I actually learned it. And now you see the second level of this and you start like feel way more comfortable about this. And the beautiful thing for me out there is those students who are taking the class second time, they see struggle of other new students. So they actually stepping up and helping, assisting like interns in the room. This is the best way to learn things, doing things, teaching as well. So I call it apprenticeship or internship, whatever it is, but it's definitely there. It's worth to have it second time, period. And we're not charging this for people to take it second time. Again, each time mentor can be different or just say it differently. Mentor grows together with you guys. So you influence each other and you grow as a synergy. That's what I love about it. Actually, it brings us to this is another meetup I'm running as a free meetup. And it brings us to the interesting topic. Startup HV, it's for those who want to do startups because it's such a buzz. Everybody is doing startup. Everybody is speaking, talking about startups. Like startups is like, everybody must to know what's that. And people just kind of shame to say you do not have startup, at least in my world. Every person like has some startups. Sometimes we just have idea for startup, not really working for startup, but that's my reality at least. So I'm running this because I have a lot of entrepreneurship experience and coaching experience for startups. And I'm applying very simple, from my perspective, tools, which is business model canvas. And I learned that it's incredible, powerful tool for people. And I'm so happy to see on the back of your walls some tools from business model canvas. For example, customer discovery is like must have, but very significant piece of business model canvas. So we do value proposition canvas, we do customer development, we do scenario planning, and scenario playing, we do marketing. So I run it as a workshops, but not like broadcasting, but having startup applying for the hot seat. In this case, startup is just telling his story, and the crowd start to ask questions, clarifying questions first, then challenging questions, and then being guided through the business model canvas. It comes to the level, to the very structured level, actually. As developers, you can understand it now. Haha, these are building blocks, and they can be moved around, but they have to be there. They have to be defined and described. This is one type of workshops, but how to build. Sometimes entrepreneurs, business owners comes and they said like, I have the best idea is proven, I do have customers, I just need to build it. How to build it? Do I need $5 million to build it? And actually not. But how to get there? Again, we pick the crowdsource brain. So all developers in the room, they said like, oh, you can do it like this way, and it will cost you like 50,000. Wait a second, but for MVP, you can do it even cheaper. It's 10,000. Wait a second, you can do even just one landing page and check your assumptions for $1,000 or just free. Can I do it for free for you? So that's the way actually collaboration starts. And people try the water. They try each other. They see if they're a good fit through the conversation, through seeing how other people's brain works, and through really hands-on continuing collaboration. And the third kind of workshops we do have is the practice your pitch. And it's so nice to have just people saying like, I'm brave enough, I want to spread the word about what I'm doing. I believe it's the best thing in the world. Can I convince the crowd about this? So we just match investors and community and startuppers together. So we practice 5-minute pitch, then 1-minute pitch, right? The elevator pitch. Everybody benefits from this, including not only presenters, but those who are sitting in the room. They see, it's doable. Startups is not such a fancy, complicated things. Every single small improvement can be your startup, and startups can be nurtured and grown as not like next unicorn. That's interesting, eye-opening approach as well. So that's actually structured view, my vision, how it looks like, how it works, and why it works so good. I believe technology and entrepreneurship, they are like twins. They have to work together. They have to penetrate each other. They have to learn from each other. And this is the way of the synergy. That's the way how in spiral movement, it will grow and help each other. What do you need for this? Yes, you do need space. Lucky you having this space. You do need some learning activities because that's our journey. That's what our life is. Here you are changing your career, learning new skills at such an age. Wow, you will never have Alzheimer, trust me, because your brain works. Perfect. Keep going, keep learning. But those things match together. This is the secret sauce for Venn diagram, probably, of the success, because that's what creates the flow. That's what I truly believe. And those ingredients are just making it working as a puzzle. So that's what OpenHub is, and that's what OpenHub does. And this is the same picture, but a little bit detailed. Some specific technology needed to be learned, used as resources. So space-wise, you do need projects, meetups, and community, of course. You do need same things for entrepreneurship. And surprisingly enough, hackathon, it's like the main thing where you can create in very intense setup, you can create things and you can enjoy and experience this. It's very intense. Those who took this, I guess some of you already did, no? Yes? Wasn't it fun? Yay, yay. That was my actually first thing. I was like, I'm nobody, I'm like, has to start from the scratch. And I went to the meetup and I went to the hackathon. And like, wow, I can do things. Wow, everybody is needed because collaboration matter, and you see, inspired by other people, you can see what you're capable of. Everyone is mirror for you. Each stranger you met in your life is not a friend, not the enemy, but the mirror. It's your assistance, it's your guidance. So we do need each other. That's the message. Saying that, here is hackathon in Hudson Valley. I'm excited to have the first one. You guys lucky to have Hack Upstate here. Use it. Come, learn. But come to my thing too, please. I really want to see delegation from the Hack Upstate because it's proved the idea that there is no borders at all, and specifically in New York State. So we can telecommute, we can work remotely, we can work for each other, assisting each other, and you never know what will happen. I'm so happy to have my friend Tony here accompany me, lucky me, because I see him first time during last 3 years. He used to be in Hudson Valley, now he's in Buffalo, but it's okay. Here's the meeting point. Yes. So Hudson Valley Festival will consist of 2 things. It's not just hackathon, like 2-day hackathon as usually, but the conference, 1-day conference and 1-day hackathon. We did it on purpose. We want to solve regional challenges. So I referred to this a little bit before. New York City is like the city of millions of people, like 10 millions?
8.6.
Yeah, but if you just include greater areas, yes, it's definitely more. Syracuse is 500,000. It's different kind of challenges, different kind of setup, different kind of flow. So it means city and community, they have different kind of challenges. And Hudson Valley, about 25,000 people, each city, only 3 big cities like that, and everything else is just spread even. Different kind of challenges. We do want to solve local, regional challenges. Transportation, public transportation challenge. There are a lot of sustainability questions challenge. And it's actually, surprisingly enough, it's all rooted to open data. Open data exists. It seems, and I saw so many startups rooting and using open data and just creating new services. I was excited to see how New York City, digital NYC, beta NYC, how they just actually encourage community and technology business and government collaboration. three pieces of the puzzle. So they sit together, they discuss. So the government agencies are providing open data for the community, and they want to see how community or developers will use this data, what they can build with this, saying that they will bring more data. But it's happening in the New York City only, nowhere else. We're like abandoned. We don't know what's going on in our area. And we're kind of blind, not knowing our data. So this is the opportunity, and open data exists, right? Yes, data exists. We don't know what's going on. How to do this. This would be the approach for the hackathon, but the challenges would be defined for the conference. We want to showcase New York City success and use cases. We want to showcase Syracuse as another city hacked some challenges already. And we want to think collaboratively, picking the crowd brain to see what's doable for the Hudson Valley with our regional setup, with our density population, with deep diversity of people, with so much legacy hurted by IBM, and not only. There are a few other programs which really hurted the area. So that would be interesting. I really encourage you to come to learn from the conference and actually to do things there. I will bring amazing speakers for the conference, so you will definitely have a lot of information to digest and sure networking. So saying that, this slide is about how do we want to do it. Day 1 conference and day 2 hackathon. I will not read it out loud. You probably know already a little bit about this. But the place will be gorgeous. One community college, SUNY Orange, will host the conference, and local college, Mount St. Mary College, will host the hackathon. For Newburgh specifically, for my hometown, we will have a lot of results because I know what my city struggle with. And the government, who are literally illiterate in technology, they will benefit from this a lot. They will have the sense what technology is and what they can do. I want to educate them, and I want to provide local people with the spirit of collaboration, seeing how technology can change their life. Newburgh and Poughkeepsie, specifically, those two cities were very hurted with drug addiction and with all of these, I don't know how to name these programs, but not good programs. No jobs, moving people out there, so they become drug dealers, they go to the prisons, like really 30% of the population is like that. We want to show them there are their opportunities. Their kids are talented. One of my students, actually a school student, he took the boot camp and he was like, wow. And he changed his family this way. So engaging youth to change the life, that's the message. And I want the youth and school kids to participate in the hackathon, but they do need developers like you are. For you, it's proof record that you are a developer, but you will have chance to mentor others. There is no better way to learn, but teaching, sharing, mentoring. I think that's it. If you do have any questions, I will be happy to answer. And I'm excited you guys are doing this. You're already there. You did the major step toward your career change and being part of this tribe. Anything else? Can I do?
Questions for Yulia?
I have a question.
Sure.
If I wanted to show up to one of these meetings, where would I find information about like where they're located and what time?
Yeah, meetup.com, but I do so many, it's probably worth to check the website, OpenHubProject.com.
Okay.
And my business card is there, so you can grab this. And I hope that Jesse, Ryan, they will share my information with you. So welcome to volunteer with the event. Welcome to come to showcase. If you want to travel, we definitely will help you just with accommodation as well. And we will give you a tour because it's amazing, gorgeous area. Hiking, biking, whitewater rafting, whatever you want, fishing. Okay. Hey.
I apologize for coming
morning and like get lost in downtown with and you brought up I'm just grateful you brought up mentoring, especially women. I hear the word mentoring more in women's circles than I do in circles surrounding, usually right with men. And I'm just glad to hear that.
I apologize.
Well, no, just grateful to hear that. And how in my other world, it was like mentoring just kind of happened. I fell upon my mentors. It wasn't like I could choose them, or it didn't feel like we kind of all, and my two mentors in academia, we ended up together. It wasn't planned. And I've heard in this field in tech, lots of people, I ask them to mentor me. Is that common in your experience?
When women ask other women to mentor her?
Is that?
Yes, I think so.
It's asked overtly.
Yes, women are way more supportive to each other because they kind of being there, like me being single mom, like knowing the struggle so deep. And this is the first reason. And the second reason, I guess, is our like kind of nurturing nature. Biologically, we want to just help other people, babysit other people. But man wants to protect other people and inspire them like real warriors.
Lead.
Yeah, I really love all of these diversities, I would say, we can provide to each other. We are also different, and that's why we are so good in collaboration, because we are different. And we can see our uniqueness through other people's eyes. But probably it's like nice entrance, having other women to nurture you, because she will be more forgiving, or at least it's the assumption to know.
Right. It's just a different, I've found different understanding for women that have my male mentors, which is definitely very important to me, or has been my old field. So having women mentors.
Yes, but it's probably about communication style mostly.
Right.
It's not about how brain works.
Right. No.
I just learned that women probably sometimes more detail oriented, and men are just really just go and hack the code immediately with no fear. We're like, oh, dancing around, what if, and men just go straight forward and do these things. But it's not necessarily, again, you can spiritually speaking, we all contain both energy, feminine and masculine energy, yin and yang. It's existing in all of you in different proportions, in different, and actually you can call your energy. Now I want to be a warrior, so no matter my gender is, I just want to call my energy this way, and my energy will be really fighting, intentional, radiating things, right? Or protecting the turf, protecting something. Or then I want to be more fluid, more nurturing, like, oh, okay. Now I'm in this mode, so I call another energy, like calling different attitude, I would say. If you master your own personality, your own energy, you will be very comfortable about this, no matter what.
Also brought up you were a dancer.
Yeah.
I came in late. Ballerina?
No, I'm not ballerina.
No.
I started dance 10 years ago only.
Only 10
Yes, I was thinking I'm elephant, I'm not able to move. It turned out I was so inspired by this, so now I'm just tango dancer. I may say one of the best in the area.
Argentina?
Yeah.
Only
Yeah,
tango,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
It
yeah,
was good under.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely change your, dancing is recommended for everyone. Pardon, not talking. That's definitely how you learn yourself very much. And it's so good for your health, for your brain. Okay.
I'm from Hudson, New York, and
Oh, nice.
it's really like, it's kind of hilarious for you to be able to come all this way from like Russia to the Hudson Valley to
Yay.
here.
You
To-
notice
yeah.
that?
Oh, yeah, right. To tell me that like, the Hudson Valley is not that bad. Like, I spent my whole life like trying to get away from there because it's like not that cool. There's not that much going on. Like you said, the population density is really low. It's super rural. So like, going to places where there's like more people and more stuff and more educational opportunities is like the thing to do. So it's really cool to hear that, like, you know, there's other cool people that like want to do cool tech stuff in the area, and I can just like hop on the train and like I'll be there in like 30, 45 minutes, and then I could just go home after the hackathon.
Awesome. That's definitely. I'm so excited when I started doing things, just like being desperate, and so many awesome people show up, like right here. Why? We can see you because nothing was happening here until you called, and now they're just really dedicated to assist and have awesome volunteers, supporters, mentors. They said just like call us, we will teach for free. They just top-notch consultants or developers for Google or Dell or DigitalOcean or Gremlin or whatever it is, and they're here to give you all this knowledge. Number one iOS developer, number one person. He lives in Hudson Valley and he's teaching girls to do iOS development for free because he just wants to do something for women. I don't know why. Don't ask me. He chose to do that. That's so true.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I will leave my cards here.
Great.
You can grab them. Feel free to contact me, and I hope Jessica will send email or something.
Yes, I just sent us all of Yulia's contact information in our Slack channel as well. So feel free to email, and I took a picture of her card. Posted it.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
So yeah, hopefully you
Technology.
There you go.
Doing things differently. That's what you're not actually.
Thanks, Yulia.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, and the stream. Yep. Then you know the drill.
Split it up.
I'll turn the volume on this.
Hopefully
Yeah.
he's they're all better.
Yeah, hopefully.
Cool. Well, thanks again, Ryan.
Yeah, no
Appreciate you
problem.
Facilitating all this.
Yeah. Oh,
I mean, I love it. But that's just fact. They won't usually.
okay. What? Don't let our animals become anonymous. Oh, huh. That's kind of cool, Google. Okay. Hi. You guys have a good weekend?
Yeah, it was a little bit short.
Okay. Cool.
It was good.
So
From people hilarious.
I'm usually like,
Kids are funny.
today we are going to talk about another way to make HTTP requests. So I know this whole HTTP thing, we got a theme here. And on Friday we talked about Postman and curl. Well, today we are going to talk about really one JavaScript way to make HTTP requests. The second one here is more just, I want to mention it just so you guys know it exists, but really what we're going to be talking about today is this thing called fetch.
Did you change the Zoom phone? The Kier said that you got.
Oh, yes, I did. I should post a link to that somehow. Copy streaming link.
Oh, the Kier
Yeah.
and Kate said they got kicked out of the call.
You can go to the Zoom real quick and just make sure.
Yeah, I made a new one because you told me to do.
Yeah. Let me.
Oy.
No, it's not your fault. It's my fault.
Okay.
No,
No, it's stuff's always fun.
Should be that same link, right?
I didn't go to the same link.
Oh, what is the link now?
Can
Is there a way
I
to see that?
copy it somehow?
Yeah, that's copy streaming link. Yep, right
Okay,
there.
let's.
Don't mind, just ping that in Slack real quick. Sorry,
That's,
Ryan.
that's that guy though.
Thank you for bearing with me.
It's not the Zoom
it
link.
is. See that ID? Can you like screen cap that real quick or something?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Can I click on it? Okay.
Thank you for bearing with us. It is very simple to say.
Okay. That.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
So it's. I don't exactly know how you can.
Yeah, I was
post
gonna say
that.
join
Okay.
with this.
Stop share and then it'll show you the URL.
Oh, will it?
Yeah, I would just keep it with. Yeah, keep with this one.
Okay.
You're fine. All right, cool. I'll pin that to Zeus. Thank you, Ryan.
Yep. Okay. Cool. So fetch. We talked about making requests with Postman and curl, and fetch is a third way of doing that. What's different about fetch? Well, fetch is actually built into a web browser. It's like the modern way. There's older ways, but it's the modern way you make HTTP requests in a web browser. And it's pretty good. It's used mostly these days. Occasionally, though, you'll run into the kind of the old way people used to do it called jQuery.ajax. I don't know if you guys have talked about jQuery at all in this class. Haven't quite watched all the videos in the past, but jQuery is a library that was used for many years to kind of provide a bunch of features for to make doing things in the web browser easier. Like it had like these utility functions to abstract away a lot of the DOM stuff you did in Module 4 and stuff like that. Still used a bunch. And jQuery.ajax was a way you could make HTTP requests in the browser, just like fetch. So it was kind of the older way of doing it. So I just want to mention that exists in case you run into it, but we're not going to talk about it today. If you're curious at all about it and maybe its differences and its pros and cons, come find me afterward and we'll chat about it. Does that make sense? Cool. Okay. So fetch, just like document or like window or any of these things you've talked about in Module 4, is a global JavaScript function. So it's accessible anywhere in your code. It's fetch, F-E-T-C-H, just like it's spelled up there. It's not capitalized, it's all lowercase. So it accepts multiple parameters. It's just a function you call with multiple parameters about how to make an HTTP request. Just like Postman, you type into the boxes, or curl, you write out the command, or if you're doing it manually with Netcat, you type it all in. And then it asynchronously makes that request and provides a JavaScript object representing the response. So then you can get things like the status code, the response headers, the body, all that sort of stuff. OK, so we're going to actually talk about this function now. You guys can all see this pretty good? So the fetch function has two parameters. The first one being the URL you want to make a request to. So just like the URL you'd put in with curl or you'd put in into Postman. And then second of all, it has an object, a JavaScript object of parameters that are optional, different parameters you can specify to change how it makes a request. So if you noticed right now, things like the body or like the request headers or the method, those things we've talked about for the past couple days, those aren't in here. And the reason why is, oh, I just did that. The reason why is those are different options you specify to the options object that you pass to fetch. So you can specify a method, like the key of method and a value of get, post, put, pass, delete, all the ones we've talked about. You've got a headers object in here, a sub object where you can specify like a key, a header name, and match to a value, like the value of that header. You've got a similar thing with the data. So you have like this data key and it maps to this, and that's the request body. So this method, headers, and data, those are the three you use the most with fetch. There's a couple more that come in occasionally. But those are really the three that we're going to probably touch on today. Does that all kind of roughly make sense? OK, cool. Dakir, are you talking right now? Oh.
Not on purpose.
Not on purpose? OK, cool. OK. So I figured I'd just make it abundantly clear. And maybe this isn't clear. I thought about this morning, and I figured I had to try to do this. So here's a netcat example, and here's the fetch example. And every piece over here is the same color as the fetch example. So if this is a helpful way for you to think about it, you can see that like the method or the protocol here, that's relates to the port, and like this is where this guy comes in, and that's where the path comes in. So I don't know. I'll let you when we get to the exercises, this might be a helpful thing for you to look at if you're having some trouble. OK. So lastly, the fetch second parameter all the parameters that I specified before, like the method, the headers, the data, those actually, oh, that should say data, oops. Method, headers, and data, they aren't actually required. So just like with curl and with postman, method defaults to get. Typically, get is the default HTTP method you'll run into if you don't specify one, pretty much with any tool. Headers defaults to no headers. That's probably kind of an obvious thing. So like an empty object, like the empty curly braces. And then it should say data defaults to just an empty body. So if you're making a GET request, like you typically don't have a body in that sort of request, or like a post, it would be posting with an empty body if you don't have that body key in there. So if you see examples where I don't have all three of those, it's not because I forgot them. It's just because I'm assuming that it's using this default behavior. That make sense? Cool. Okay. So if you notice over here, fetch is a function. And just like I would guess most of the functions you've dealt with in this class so far, functions return something. They give you back a value given data you pass into the function. So like if you have an add function, you give it 2 parameters, like 2 numbers, gives you back those numbers added together or something. Fetch is no different. You give it a URL, you give it some parameters of the way you want it to make the request, and it gives you back, it returns back to you a response. And that so that response contains things like the status code. It contains something like the body, the response headers, all that sort of stuff that we've talked about. And you guys probably at this point are tired of me drilling and drilling and drilling, but I promise this is the last day we're talking about making HTTP requests. Seriously. I'm just as tired of it as you guys probably are. So the little bit of a wrinkle, though, is that the return value you get from fetch is a little different from probably most of the return values you've dealt with so far. It's actually inside this thing called a promise. And promises could probably be a whole day on their own. And I want to short circuit a lot of that. So I'm going to kind of give you guys like the couple-minute explanation of what a promise is. Have you guys used set timeout before, I'm guessing?
Done what?
Set timeout. Does that sound familiar to you before at all? Okay. Okay, this is going to be fun then.
Yeah.
So it's a way you can say maybe in some number of milliseconds run some code. I would guess when that was brought up, this whole notion of an asynchronous function or asynchronous stuff came up. Yeah. So fetch is also asynchronous. So what that means is when you make a request, you kind of kick off the operation, but all the code after it still kind of runs. Like this is kind of a hard thing to explain. And if you do it a bunch of times, you'll start to get the hang of it. But when the function returns, it hasn't actually finished making the request yet, or finished like getting a response from the server and all that stuff yet. So it kind of has to give you back like a placeholder value. Like think of it as like you like pay some money and you get a ticket, and then later on you can like exchange that ticket for the actual thing. Like you go to like a concert and you get like the beer ticket. It's like that sort of thing. Seriously, I don't know where I come up with these examples. It's just totally off the top of my head. But like you can think of it like that. You get back from fetch this ticket, and you have a variable, and then contained in that variable is this ticket. And then you can then say when that ticket is done, when it's what they call in the promise linguistic framework being resolved, like it's completed, then I can like actually do something with that value. Does that make sense? I imagine that was probably pretty confusing. Okay, it's gonna, as we do it a couple times, it'll make some more sense. So here's what it actually looks like in JavaScript. You have this fetch call you make here. You may call this fetch function, give it the URL, give it the method, all that other stuff if you want to. And you get back from it this promise thing. You store that in a variable. And then there's this value on the promise called then. It's like a method you can call. And you pass it a function, like a callback, just like you would with set timeout or any of those things, or you give it a function to execute in so much time. Here we give it a function to execute once the request is complete. And then that function, when the request is complete, in other words, once this ticket, that ticket now is turned into the beer or whatever, it will then run this function and it'll print out the status code. So for example, if this request worked, we'd log out 200. The important thing to realize here, though, is that I'm going to come back to this one in a second. The important thing to realize here, though, is the console.log is inside of the then. If you put the console.log below it, it's not going to work. And just if you think through it a bit, it might make a little more sense to looking at the code, because this function has response in it. If you put console.log below the then, or like not inside of it, you don't have access to that response value. So the only way you can get it is by putting it inside of there. So something often people will do, like as a mistake at the very beginning, is they forget there's this whole like asynchronous piece to it, which you'll probably make as you start to deal with this. But just remember, there's an asynchronous piece here. There's a function that's called when your request finishes. You do anything you want to do when the request is done inside of that function. So I have probably drilled that home way too much. But one other thing here. So it turns out there's actually often a second promise involved in this sort of stuff. We were just logging out the status code. If you want to get the body of the response, you actually have to, that also comes as a promise. So here we have this text method on a response. And when you call that text method, you get a second promise. I'm calling it promise2. And in a similar sort of way, I'm calling this then thing on there. And notice how I have a little syntax error there. Nice. You have another console.log inside of there, inside of the nested promise. So you actually, if you want to log out the body, you have to wait for both those promises. You have to wait for first the request to finish. Then after that, you have to wait for to get the text out of the response. And after that, you can log it. So this is probably the most complicated thing I'd imagine you'd have to deal with at this point in your coding careers when it comes to fetch. But it's if it looks a little weird, you'll get used to it soon enough. Okay, demo time. Okay, so I am going to go to our good old module5.tk server thing that I wrote that somehow is still not fallen down and collapsed and died a painful death. And we are going to use fetch. Oh, and I got to make this bigger. Sorry, folks. Half-life is way too long. How's that for size? Okay. So you guys can follow along with me if you want, or if you don't want to, that's fine too. Oh, interesting. Okay, well, if I, just like with any of these other objects, you can type them in here like document's a thing. Fetch is also a thing. Fetch is this global function we can call anywhere. So I'm going to start out, I'm just going to make a request to that that good old fruit endpoint that I wrote that gives you that list of fruit. So I'm going to call the fetch function. And the first parameter, I'm going to give it a URL to fetch. I go module5.tk/fruit. And then I'm going to give it that second parameter and give it a couple options. I don't really have to necessarily. I could just make it a GET request and stuff like that. But I'm just going to be explicit about it, put that GET in there. I'm going to store this in a response variable. That make sense? I went a little fast there. So if you want me to slow down or explain anything in particular, feel free to speak up. I think everyone's just typing. So I'll wait for everyone to.
So you said you're giving an example of fetch inside a response variable.
Yeah, so I'm in the JavaScript console right now. Sorry, I should have elaborated on this a bit more. I'm in the JavaScript console right now inside of Chrome, which I'm pretty sure you guys have all used quite a bit from looking at that stuff. Yeah. So I'm inside of here. I'm going to do an example fetch call to give you guys a demo of how it works roughly. So we kind of look through the presentation, but I want to show you guys in particular some stuff. Yeah, so we're making our fetch request, and we're storing the ticket we get back in response. In fact, I'll be even more explicit about that. I'll call it response promise. Okay, so I'm going to run that. I get undefined. Well, that's because it's stored in the variable. So I'm going to response promise. Hey, there we go. We got this promise thing. And if you notice, it says resolved in here, and it says stuff in there. don't worry about that. It's just kind of like how the browser prints it out. It says resolved in there because the promise is already resolved. It just so happens that we kicked off the request, and I typed out the variable after the request finished. But in your actual code, what would most likely happen is you would make the request, and immediately the next thing would run. And if you do that, it's very unlikely it'll be resolved right away. It's just the way this demo is kind of coming together. If you'd like afterwards, I can show you how that would actually come into play. But if we do our response promise dot then, and we give it our function response, does that make sense to you guys? So we have this response promise, we call then on it, we pass in a function, that function accepts our response, and this is effectively us converting that ticket into the beer. It's taking the handle we have to something that we will get eventually and trading it for the actual response. So if I do this, it'll print out the response. And if you notice in here, there's some stuff that might look a little familiar, like status 200, status text. That's like where it said like 200 OK. That it gives you that. You really never end up using that, but they give it to you anyway. You get the URL. You get a bunch of other stuff too. But I also want to give you guys the response body, because that's really the part that like everyone wants to see. So in that sort of case, we need to do something very similar to this sort of thing. We need to have a second promise inside, and we need to unpack that text and get the text in the body and then do something with it. Also, I didn't ask. Does this so far here make sense to people?
Yeah. So
Okay.
now should we be getting that if we're on visual code?
I'm
sorry, I'm not paying
Module
attention.
5.tk, right?
Yeah, so it's important right now you're on module 5.tk for this. We're going to talk about probably at the beginning of next week why that is. But just for now, take my word for it. You want to be on that website.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to do I'm basically just copying what's going on in here. So you guys can either just go from there or watch me or do whatever is easy, whatever is going to help you the most. Oops. Can't see anything? Oh, sorry. How about that?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I didn't realize I did that out loud.
Please do. I can't really tell. Okay. I'm just going to put text right there. So just walking through this one more time here. We get our promise. We call then on it. We get the response out of that promise. We extract the response out now once it's occurred. And then after that, we call then on this text attribute or text method on the response. And this takes the response, gets the body out of it as text. And then we similarly have to do same thing we did with the response, where we unpack it, we get the text out, and then I'm logging it out. So if everything goes to plan, yeah, hey, we got that. Sweet. So that's like the really quick introduction to making requests in the browser. Now, I had, oh yes, the other piece here. How just in general, what tabs on the top of DevTools have you guys used so far? I'd imagine probably the Elements panel and the Console panel. Have you guys touched any of the other ones yet?
We did audit looked.
Oh, audits. Probably with Zoe for the
Yep.
accessibility. Okay,
And then
nice.
I may have scratched it.
Yeah, okay, cool. Well, we're going to talk about another one right now. If you notice, there's this network panel up here. This is incredibly helpful for network requests in the browser, because what it lets you do is effectively, I can see, oh, it's going to be kind of hard to read here, but I can see every single network request the browser makes. If you notice here, you can see I made a request to this fruit thing. And I got to hide, no, that guy, there we go. And I can see like the request URL, the request method, all the stuff about it. I can see all the response headers, all the request headers. I can even see like the body. If I'm really crazy, I can even see how long it took for each part of the request to take. So like it breaks it all down for you. And I will say when you're trying to figure out exactly how a request is happening in a web page, and you're kind of hitting a wall with the code, this is like a really good place to just be like, okay, what's actually happening? And there's this pane up here, this overview thing, which also is helpful because it'll do this timing thing, but it'll do it for all requests. So you can see like this request happened, and this one happened, and this one happened. And as you guys kind of do more and more in this, in all the, making requests on web pages, you'll realize you start to get into situations where you'll make like 10 requests, and they all have to be you have to have like 2 of them happen at the same time, and then 1 happen after, then 3 of them happen after that all at the same time. So anyway, it becomes very helpful. That makes sense? Okay, cool. So I think I had, so that's DevTools. So this is also a slide that I figured you guys might want as reference. It's kind of, I don't want to go through it up here necessarily, but this is 3 of the same request, all made using the 3 tools we've talked about so far. Well, not with Netcat, but you'll find that that's just better as a conceptual model, and you'll rarely actually use that in real life. So we got fetch here, we got postman here, and we got curl here, and they all do the same thing. So a good piece of reference. Okay. So now we should write some HTTP requests with fetch. So I got an exercise for you guys. It's a little bit different. Well, the first part is pretty similar to the exercise we've been doing the past couple days, the thing you're probably getting tired of doing over and over. I promise this is the last day for it. But I actually have a couple more exercises afterwards, and then I have a little optional mini project, a little optional little mini bit of research. So if you depending on what you guys, how much time you have, you're welcome to do those little mini project bits, but the exercise really is the thing that I'd like you to do. So sounds good? Okay. So let me post that for you. Wait, it's hack up stage 1. Okay, cool. So I'm probably just gonna do this thing where I just kind of walk around and see how it goes from there. I guess just before we do that, are there any questions you want me to address in general beforehand? Anything that, I mean, I realize you just kind of have seen this for the first time and really haven't done all that much exploration yet, but is anything that is confusing, let me know. Okay, well, go for it then. You should be able to do all this in the Chrome JavaScript console, just like I just did up here, making requests in there. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Do you want to keep the sample open so they can take a look?
Yes, great point. Thank you.
Or the console?
Yeah, or the console. Okay, yeah. I cleared it, but I can make it. I can do it again.
So we did the first one, right?
You probably, yeah, probably. I just stole it from.
No, that's okay. I'm just like, this is not different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Feel free to do it again. Oh, you guys did it on your own. Never mind.
I might do.
Yeah. And I need to.
So you want us to go into GitHub and find the assignment?
Yep.
Did you
Yeah, I
post it?
posted it in the
Post it in
Slack.
Slack?
Yep. Yeah. Should have mentioned that, sorry.
And you probably did, oh, there.
Oh.
it is.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Okay.
Depending on how fast you guys finish this too, I have a second lesson we might go through, but it's, we'll see. I never talked about how to actually make a new line in the JavaScript console. I just assumed we were going to do that. If you hold Shift and hit Enter, you'll get a new line. So if it's not something you've dealt with before, now you know.
I've just been like copying and pasting it from elsewhere where I could actually hit enter.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
So those should be a new line. It doesn't really matter actually, but I find that in RUS line 0. Yeah. Okay, so it's yeah. So let's just try and do that. Okay, there you go. So we got a response from this. Let's just see if that looks good. Okay, so that looks like what I have there. Okay. So we got the okay, so we got a response from us there. It's great. Do this. Try making a request to the document, just like the first part I was talking about. You would make a request, you get the response, and you attach that then to it, and have that callback call. Just log out for status. Don't do the bottom part. You think you can do that? Just right here, right? Yeah, something kind of like that. So we have a promise. We call them out, and they'll kind of do that exchange for you. And when you pass that function to them, it it's like the thing that gets called with the value you get from the exchange. Do you want me to explain it in a bit of a different way, or does that make sense?
If you don't mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so you imagine rubber band. Okay, so basically you want to get this rubber band. So the first step is you ask for the rubber band. So if you ask me for a rubber band, that's like this response. That's like this fetch call here. And imagine that the act is asking for the rubber band. That's what's stored into the response promise. It's this notion of this your initiative. And then what would happen is when you I can at any point after you call this, I can give you a rubber band at any point. So that's the reason what's difficult here is because at any point, right after you run the response, right after you run that first line, you could run a third line underneath that makes it happen. But you could wait like and then it just happens something like right, usually when that's going to happen. So because of that, you need to have some sort of way to like describe that thing happening. Have something like send you messages. This accomplishes. So if I give you the event, what you're doing with this event, you're immediately subscribing to that event. And when you get the event, it will then call that function.
Gary, Matt, Gary.
Does that make sense?
So I'm just kind of using that as just kind of the basic way. So promise function response comes for response. I guess I'm just trying to figure out where I would put. So promise response would be here. I would replace promise with promise response. Okay.
That's the thing you're acting on.
Okay. Function response. So function just it's general. I don't need to change the name of function.
Functions, you could think
So
of that as
console log, and then this is another response promise status.
This is the value that comes back from like the value you've been notified on. The value that's coming back from you requested the notification.
So it's not promise.
It's not a promise.
Oh, okay.
It's a raw value. It's like what this turns into.
Oh,
It's like the I don't know. Does that make more sense?
I think so. So then this should run.
That should run. Response promise. What I do?
Promise response. Alright, so and then I can't go back, right? I just have to try again.
Go down there and hit the up arrow. Yeah. Okay.
So like stuff maybe.
No. This is mostly the JavaScript class, so I'm very much expecting to use this.
Alright.
Yeah.
Okay. Alright.
So in general, if you have one of these promise items, when you call not then on it, that allows you to describe the value that will eventually.
Yeah, that's the first.
Right. So
If you have a promise and you call not then and you pass it a function, that allows you to describe what that promise will eventually become.
When you did what post, me too.
Well, let's just, yeah, but it's.
Yeah, and if you were there, maybe we would.
Yeah, okay.
I just need.
Yeah, but I'm still on.
When you do that.
Yeah.
Hey, now you're doing like the method in the bottom.
Yeah, so I did an object, I did an post, and then I did a column, and then I did data, did a column, and then I did text. But I still have. Oh, but isn't it because we have to say how many? Oh, yeah, we'll see.
I heard you holler. I see a request within the fetch call.
Well, I didn't get the server error this time.
Do you know what that means on the
So if you take a look there, you're making a request to module 5.9 access. Really? What error did it give you? It just out of curiosity. But for this here, that's the right response.
Did you put a space between the
So,
I know that seems like a weird, like stupid thing. What would that make a difference?
like, I actually
Yeah.
Right, but see, yeah, no, you have to find that kind of easier for you to jump to. Yeah, what do you think is wrong with that? I guess. It's fine to say you don't know too. Okay. Okay. So in typically in Java, something is not defined. It usually means there's a very defined thing that is not previously defined.
We have to change the
Okay.
package.
Okay, you have like a variable called m, you have that equal to true. That variable is an issue.
No.
So, let's say you want to,
Good idea,
let's say you
Paul.
want to generate a Ryan.
I don't know what that
And you were just type in your JavaScript, okay, Ryan. Or down the line, some, so it's similar kind of error, something is not defined. The reason why is that your handwriting, you didn't do anything like modify, you didn't initialize it.
So I just,
Did you get
I
your
said, well, maybe it's just remembering your
Get is
tape.
not defined. Your codes are displayed.
Yeah, I don't mind if I change it to say back.
See what that is.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was gonna tell you that.
See,
I just needed to check it first to make sure that's like.
Yeah.
I actually forgot to include the.
Yeah. Okay, so, what's that?
Like the first time I typed it out, like that.
It's weird, it's like a variable. Variable is trying to act as it's not defined. And once you do that, it should work fine. Hi.
Unexpected identifier.
Ooh, fun. Okay.
She didn't say weird.
No, it's good, it's
Kind
good.
of.
If you want. Okay. So you remember about objects from module 4?
Yeah, but.
Okay.
That's supposed to be like make all
Pretty much
That's
since
almost
you
fine
used
there.
that, when I worked there.
Got an object here.
Right.
You see this piece, how that's the object.
Like no,
Right.
Actually, it
I
might be
changed it
helpful
to
if you
be
put a.
thirds and everything worked fine.
What?
And it wasn't a spelling error, it wasn't,
Here,
literally all we did
enter.
was just change the word in there.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Just trying to make them.
I don't think so, because everybody else used it.
Just let them change anything.
It's really weird.
So.
They're like, oh, too many people, but same for
Right,
right.
key method, that
Nice,
code.
that's
So you've got this
Eventually,
body which maps to that.
every time there's something strange, and you're like, I don't know.
Exactly, yeah. So anytime you have a string, an unbounded characters length. in JavaScript,
I was like, you know, okay, so that was what it did.
Yup. If you do that though, that should work fine.
Yes,
Okay, so,
Because, you know, you do the same reaction like 100 times.
I didn't have quotation marks, that was what it was.
Oh.
Yeah, duh.
right, how you guys doing?
That's a real reason.
Good question.
Okay.
Yeah. So. Do I?
What? Go for
I
it.
don't know what I wanna add.
Are you trying to figure out how to write the header?
Yeah, do you put another object inside of it?
Exactly.
Okay, that's what I needed to know. Okay, I get it. So
Yep.
then you're gonna, then I'm gonna do. Right, and spell it, that'd be good. And then.
You actually say what the header and then do the object that's in there.
Yeah, so there's that,
And do I need to make the password a string?
you do.
Okay.
Okay. No problem. Yeah. okay,
What?
so we got that. Well, I just need to walk through this for me for a second, so I can see what you're doing.
Unauthorized.
You got the password wrong, I'm guessing.
But I wrote the right path.
I
Did
might
you
have-
change the path?
I don't think I did. Maybe more people get it, I might have though accidentally. Okay, so we
I'm
got
gonna
it.
make it.
We got our fetch function, we got the URL. Okay, got the parameters next. So we've got an object, we got the method key that maps to get, you got the header key. Go back to my presentation, I had that slide where I had it laid out. Yeah,
So
yep.
then it's exactly like
Yeah, so a header is a sub-object within this object. So you can, in JavaScript, the keys and values of objects don't have to be any specific type. They can just be whatever you want. They can even mix. So like got a string there, we got an object there, we got a string there. That's totally fine. We got method, maps to get, headers is an object. Was your question something more specific than that, or?
No. That's exactly what I said. Thank you.
Yep.
What?
Let me see.
Did it right, right? Or did I do it all wrong? I did it right. All wrong.
That's right. So notice how you get this line here.
Yeah.
Click on that. Jump over to the network pane. Remember this guy I was showing up above?
Yeah.
So typically, if something goes wrong, I immediately go here. And that's the body we got back.
Well, I changed one of them to password. So like if I did the first one, I'm gonna do a response.
Interesting. Go back to headers on that. And go to the request headers. Scroll down. Yeah. Okay. So it doesn't look like there's an authorization header in there.
So did I type it incorrectly?
Go back. He spelled it right. Oh, I see.
What do I do?
Go back to the presentation. I want to see if you can figure this out on your own.
Okay.
Go up to any of them that have the headers part in it. Like that one will work. So we got 3 keys: method, headers, and data. We got they all have different values.
Oh, I didn't make this a string.
Yeah. So
Will
that
that be part of it?
this is probably a bit confusing, but
Wait.
it doesn't technically matter for JavaScript keys that can be unquoted. I would say, okay, I'll let you. It's your.
Because I didn't include.
There's one character that you've screwed up. I'll give you a couple minutes. See if you can figure it out on your own. If you can't, I'll come back over and take a look at it.
Okay.
Sorry, but I'll have to try to figure
No,
it
no,
out.
no. Don't be sorry. Don't be sorry.
I feel like the sigh was not a good sign.
I'm like almost done with it, and I'm like, oh, good line. And then
Do I need a comma at the end?
Comma at the end?
Outside the object. And
You could have one, but you don't need it. Okay. Take the singular. Okay. So we got response promise. Oh, also I forget. Up arrow. Scroll through all your past stuff.
Oh.
So if you get into that issue where you run something, you enter accidentally, just up
I
arrow,
got it.
click over.
Yes.
Yep.
I'm so dumb.
That's the sort of stuff they get you.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I did the same thing. I forgot literally a character.
Oh,
Is it working for you?
Yep.
Kaylin?
You want help?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, I keep getting issues. It's just,
Cool. So you're working on marketing.
I just can't.
Which one are you on?
I'm just.
I'm giving them trying to get back. But typically I'm writing something.
I don't know.
Promise,
And the value is.
function,
Like I
both
called
curly
it
braces,
right at 200.
then I will arrow back over, and then I will.
Yeah.
Well, that's like you always
When
gonna
you
be
get that way, I always have to.
No, that's okay. That's
Every
what I'm
situation where I'm
You
half
just
a
get
like
confused.
brace all the way over.
probably that.
So,
Oh, practice here.
Yeah, so when you, because this can be multiple lines, up and down arrow also moves in like the text that you have. So notice when the cursor is there, I can cursor down and then when I get to the bottom, again, it jumps to the next one. So then I can move back up and jump back to it. It's kind of a weird.
Yeah, literally keep going.
And then I can see what happens.
Yeah.
And then they're all.
Got a syntax error,
Yeah,
that's
to your
fine.
point.
So I would say, take a look at this first line. You have a place where you've got an extra
These
Well, yeah, that's not allowed. Tactically incorrect. You don't need that. So if you get rid of that, at least we have a, what we got here, that's what you can ask for. You just gotta go through it step by step. Oh, yeah, it works. No, the thing is though, the thing is, in JavaScript, I don't do this sort of stuff anymore with other languages that I'm doing. Happens all the time. It's like, it's a step you go through in the process.
Oh, you
So-
said I'm happy, that's good.
Yeah, I would say that, no, I'm just kidding. Go through and see if you can get the rest of it. Yep.
No, I want that.
No, I just think it's showed me.
Oh, I see.
I didn't either.
I mean, I know you can do it elsewhere. Just, is this right?
That's
Oh, now you're.
Simple.
Simple.
So I would say start with, let's take your code.
So-
That's okay, I missed it.
Oh, yeah,
Just
you're
find
right.
out the whole shift enter thing.
Well, you had it already, so I don't.
And so, last question, since,
Okay,
so that rules the text, so
Typically, you put new lines after open curly braces.
if we want to pull other
So it's
stuff, like
usually
Well,
you
through stuff.
surround your
I
curly
literally just
braces and then
respond to
everything
it,
is
text format, that's all it's telling you. To create text
Oh, okay.
with the information.
If you want to pull sort of like a heading.
Catch lines.
Yeah. or-
Okay.
I just,
Okay.
I just
I'm
thought
really
that,
silly.
Okay, so another little exercise after we do this.
For header?
Always have
Yeah,
to
there's
set
not
up
pulling it from-
open
Oh, okay.
So
That's
that's
not pulling it from
front
header.
of curly braces,
Okay.
all that stuff.
so that stuff is authorization, is why it's with them. There.
The authorization is giving you access to content. That's good
And
information.
indent that one.
So if
back
you get that
over, just so
password
that-
for authorization wrong, then
Typically, you have
So for other exercises, you need
so just so that your curly braces are kind of around it and everything inside of it.
Right.
Oh, okay.
it's just
So
specific
if
to.
we do this like,
The exercise
all your
reason.
students kind of line up, all your values.
technical
So-
exercises
I think
required.
that's you right off the start.
Yeah.
Yes,
So we get that,
To work with
to work without the authorization.
Correct.
Awesome.
So two, so you were right, we got an extra goal.
Do I need to say?
You do, yeah. But you, it's interesting here, so you want to give it like a key value as the value for the header, you know?
Right.
And the secret is you need an object there. Does that make sense? Nope. No problem.
Okay, so that's all I need?
Give it a try, let's see. Okay, get is not defined. So Amber is running that over there as well. Remember this whole something is not defined, those errors usually mean.
Usually means you want to declare a boundary.
Exactly.
Right.
So if you take a look here, get is not defined. It thinks get is a variable.
Okay.
So take a look at your code and look through it, and does it make sense to you why it thinks get's a variable? Exactly. Yes, there you go. Yeah, so it's
Me in quotation marks, part 2.
That's, watch other people are doing it too, don't feel bad. Well, the request worked,
But I was unlawful.
but you got, yeah. But,
Did you change this? I just was doing
You
it
know,
from memory. I mean, you didn't change it.
I didn't change it, so I'm wondering if I screwed something up. Why is it every single time I make a new release of the server, I mess something up? It's okay, well, the important thing is you can make the request. Not necessarily that the data that comes back is valid, although that's the whole.
But I did get the message from you before that you were
Yes.
very impressed, so.
Yes.
I'm still flowing.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about the fourth one?
Yeah,
Okay, so I don't know if this is right, but this is what I got back.
which is the fourth one? I forgot.
The fourth one is /1. Make your
Oh,
request to
Just for, it's forward slash.
Forward slash.
Yeah, sorry.
No, not bad.
Okay,
Learning question here.
yeah, so what you got back is right.
Okay.
Now, what I was trying to get at with this exercise.
Yeah.
Is for you to think about what Fetch is doing and think about what the web browser is doing. And if you can kind of, I mean, it's really meant as more of just an opportunity to see the web browser makes a request, Fetch is making a request. Fetch is giving you back HTML, the HTML over there, kind of to correlate that. I didn't really spell it out because I want to see if people come to it on their own. But yeah,
Well, yeah, I
it's,
mean, that's, if I pull up what you asked me to pull up in the browser, I get this exact same
yeah,
thing.
exactly. So it's, what the web browser is doing is just that.
Oh,
Okay.
that's not well, like, actually.
Oh.
Well, no, that's why I thought, I was like, I'm not getting that at all.
But just for your reference, typically in every Unix system, so not Windows systems, all the paths start forward slashes. Windows, they're backslashes. And the web falls into the Unix bucket in this too. So it's truly, Windows is the other one. Yeah, that's gonna be tomorrow.
And I was like, I know.
Yeah. I'm gonna talk about how this is to you, but I probably gonna wait maybe another 5 minutes. No, I'm just gonna go for it.
Cool.
But I have a documents of the exercises I might bring up and use it.
Static. I don't know what I'm doing.
Just, you don't know what you're doing? Let's take a look.
What's that? Yeah, that's what.
Okay.
Oh, wait,
So which one are you on, number 2?
No, you're supposed to get the.
So we're
Word list.
let's see. So that's what we're done. Okay. So we have to-
Yeah. That's a.
Okay. So you get some weird stuff. Okay. Well, I guess let's walk through it from the beginning. So we got response promise, we got our fetch. That to me looks all good. So you're calling fetch, you're giving it the URL you want to fetch.
Server side error.
Method you want to fetch. And if you type out, response promise, let's take a look in there and see what's. Yeah, okay, so that looks just like the one I have on my screen. That looks good. Okay, response promise.then, this piece. So I guess I was, well, I'm just talking about give the same sort of explanation of promise that I just gave Jason. Don't forget the rubber band. Yes, I think I'm using tissue this time. Okay. Tissue. So imagine you want this tissue from me. Typically, a polite way to get the tissue from me is not grabbing out of my hand and asking for it. The thing about that you call similar sort of thing, you're asking me for the tissue. You're asking me for it. Does that make sense? Okay, so you're asking the server some data. And the server can give you that data.
One of my students.
The server
pretends to be really
it's not like
aggressive to get her to do anything.
I can give you the tissue now, I can give you it in like an hour. But you don't really have this notion of how long it's going to take for the server to retrieve that.
And she'd be like, yeah, cake.
Well, yeah. That's a pretty wide gap. Like, if you're just using the knowledge you have about software right now, how would you handle that? I would imagine probably something like, you have like a loop, and you like loop, and you're just like, calculate the function, you're just kind of like waiting and spinning for it to happen. Once it's happened, then and that's perfect.
What's up?
So, it's working for it. I'm just copying pasting your magic. You know, like, trying to work out like the same. I did, it's not the same thing, but I know the first part there, right? Like right now, I'm just using like the city school, I'm just fetching all of the text from the website.
Oh, cool.
So that was kind of the same exact thing, I just replaced.
So
That's cool.
The website with the series instead of just the TV. So I was like, oh, will work, or is there any like password?
That's all the HTML.
Yep.
Yep, that's really cool.
So thank you again for
Oh,
fixing my furious and all that.
You're welcome.
Send me a message.
It's okay.
It's like a way of subscribing.
Okay, so that's all we need.
When the,
Huh?
when the response has the HTML server, when
Yeah.
it's come, like open
Well-
network, call it back to the center.
Where's the
When
word
it's
come?
come, then the backslash function.
Yes, with the period, so it just waits there for the data until the next time.
It's, it doesn't get it like that. I would say it doesn't say what does it, I think of it like, you give it a function and like store that function away. And once that data comes back, it then calls your function with that data. And you can do this. Oh, you can sound like.
Yes,
It almost never matters.
Put a placeholder.
Why don't you have 500?
Because I screwed up. Sorry.
It's an internal, it's a server error. What'd you do though?
Yeah, I think
I don't know.
what did you do well?
Sorry, I
Which one I
interrupted.
did? I didn't have anything.
So there we go.
It's, so you can think of kind of the promise as a wrapper. Like it's kind of what it might sound like too, like a promise of future value. So it's a thing you can take and
You already have the response promise to mine. Change it to like.
a little more sense. So you want me to try that again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, try that.
That's why I
So just wait, no wait, that's the by response, so
Well,
like call this function when you
You
have
can,
these.
you can make it bigger when you put it from the weight.
Yeah, that would make a nice.
It's like you split focus, like one side of you waits for, while the other one keeps doing stuff. It's just kind of like, remember, at the time that you go, it's similar to that, where like you're saying, this
Yeah, that's how you-
execute in the
yeah.
future. Well, this
Well,
one
you kind of text with it, but.
execute in the future. It's just, it depends on how far in the future it gets executed, is how long it takes the server to return a response. So instead of being a fixed line like second, it's just a complete server. And this means you can say like, whenever the server gives you that data,
So this is a function that needs a while loop, but then you have.
the
While loop, it just needs a.
So when you're using a promise directed at you don't do it. That's, the loop is what you can think of how you do it without the promise. So if you say, you ask me for this issue, go back to that again, and then every second you ask me again, understand, you can issue, I say no, and he's like, this issue, I say no. And that's kind of the loop idea there. Where instead of the promise, what I would do, what you do is you say, can I have this issue? I'd say, okay, give me some stuff, and then you say, okay, well, when you do me this issue.
And then you can go to
And then,
network.
then whenever I feel like I want to get to the issue, I give you the issue, and I say,
Why?
hey, Anna.
So large.
And
I
you
don't
say,
know where I
okay,
am.
I'm gonna run this function. So then
Yay.
It's
Welcome.
okay. Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
The body needs to be lowercase. I don't know why that error in particular, probably because there was no, maybe it didn't find that body. That could be considered, wouldn't that be a constructor if it's uppercase,
The
right?
promise is like the
maybe
the
that's
value
I
represents
was like,
like.
oh, that's not there.
You ask the issue.
We fucked up.
So that's like the request you're making.
Oh,
And
I'm
that
assuming, I don't know.
The query you made to me is
Well, and
encapsulated in
oftentimes
the value.
defines,
It's
if I get that back,
thing.
like, there's
And
something
then-
wrong.
But then is you saying, you're giving me that function again wrong.
Yeah, I kept having to go to its network and then you can check everything you requested and it'll give you the response.
So what effectively ends up happening is.
Mine prints it out sometimes and then not other
When
times.
this request finishes, immediately after you initiate the request, you take this value, you attach this handler to it. And because you do it immediately, like there's no chance of it coming back before you attached it. So you attach it, and then on any further time, you get back that response, and then all that function has been attached with the
No, I think you just said the exclamation.
You can think of, yeah, think of it like waiting, yeah, it's they're waiting, and once that responses come back, it calls the function with the response. So like this value here, response promise, turns into this, like this function inside is called with this value that came through response promise.
So the response is value that's being sent by the.
Exactly. So usually in HTTP or in communication in general.
Oh,
Communication.
good job.
So just an HTTP, you have a request, which is the query you make to the server. The response, which is the thing the server is in fact going to answer your query.
So, I would write this line and I would have the response. Like this. Status.
Yeah, so maybe would it be helpful to walk through what this is doing?
Yeah.
Okay. So we got the same line up here. So we have this response promise, and we attach our handler to it, this response function. So when the response comes back from the server, it's going to call this function, getting it the response it got back. So then we're inside of the function. First thing here is like talks about log status, response.status. So that should be pretty self-explanatory in your function. Just logging out that status thing from inside the response on it, hopefully 200. Then I have this response.text.then. So what's weird about this is there's actually two promises involved. There's the promise for the request. And it turns out that extracting the body from the request also takes some time. And it's also an asynchronous operation. So it's also something where you have to ask, in this case, you're asking like the browser, you're saying, hey browser, extract the body from this request. And the browser says, okay, here's like a little ticket saying that I'm going to do that. And then you come back to the browser and say, okay browser, when you're done with getting this text out of the body, notify me.
So this is doing the same thing here. What is text? Is this a function?
It's a function that exists on the response. So think of this response like something that does like curly braces. Think of it being a text piece and the value being a function, like an anonymous function. And that returns, that function returns a promise.
So whatever is being passed in here, is these, is being passed in the text function, the response function.
Yeah, so that this response here, this is the thing that the text function is being called on. It's the thing that it's that response object. You can think of it like the representation of the thing you get back from that, like where it says like HTTP 1.1 200 OK, like that thing is what this response process is. Okay, let's go back. This one. What part of it are you confused about? Are you confused about this part of the promise piece?
The text,
Oh, okay, okay.
that's what's confusing me. Okay. You said it's being called on the response.
Yeah, let's do this. Typically, this is not a great thing to do, but just for demonstration, say we're going to do it.
As long as you got, no.
So what I just did here is I made a variable outside of this, and I set this value here equal to the variable. So now we have this guy here in the console. This, I mean, this is just typically you don't want to do this, but just for this example, to make it easy to see. Okay. So I'm going to run this response.text. Response.text is a function. So we already talked about that a bit, but I'm going to run this function. I get a prompt. This looks a lot like
They got methods.
it's pending, but it looks similar. So it's the same sort of value that fetch returns. Header. So I'm going to run this again with this. I'm going to store it in the variable. Oh. Need to make the request. Sorry. So I stored this value into this. And now, see how this is the same sort of result thing the other one has. So this acts the same sort of way as the value of the branch. It's a token value that acts as a placeholder value. That was a really bad explanation. Let me try again. It is a this is a value that doesn't exist yet when you run the function. When I run response, it isn't even returned automatically. So it's in its place. You have like let me go back to the tissue.
I'm thinking of an ambush to do is like, I mean, how do we get
Yeah, that's or think of like a good example of a coffee cup. Think of this promise as the cup, and then you originally when you call response on text, the function returns back to you an empty cup. You don't get to look at the cup. All you can do is you can just ask someone else, or ask the person giving the cup, is the cup full? So what you can do here. When you call response on text, you get back an empty cup. And then when someone wants to give you back that data, they'll pour something into the cup. Like the text they're giving back to you, giving you your coffee or whatever.
Okay, so let me get this straight. So the then function response is just saying, okay, wait for this person for value, and then this is just like a placeholder with like a value specific after that function.
Exactly. Yeah, this value on its own is not helpful. The only thing this value does gives you a way of getting the value you're going to get in the future.
Okay.
This is like the thing that allows you to call them or to subscribe to that value coming. The thing that allows you, the way you can effectively ask to see if that cup is full or empty. Okay. So this text method here acts just like a fetch, and that returns a promise. And if we now if you call text more than once, it throws an error. So I have to rerun the request periodically to get back, like to redo everything. Which is okay, one more try here.
When you're doing it in the exam, you have to do it over and over again.
Oh yeah. So we've got A here. Now we can call A dot then. So same sort of thing. We're saying whenever response dot text, you get back that text, call a function. I'm gonna have it call data.
So it's like a loop, but backwards, like where instead of waiting for validation, like going through the validation, you actually are do like you have the validation and then you have the insight of the function. I think so. I don't know if I'm making sense because it's the text is getting the value and then it's telling the function the response, passing it to the response to function to do whatever. I don't know.
I think no. I think we got the rough idea. I would say that have you used something else that might be helpful to talk about? Just a set time example. Just give like another example case. So have you used set timeout before, this guy? Okay, let's talk about this briefly. So there's normally a whole thing people go off on when we talk about set timeout. It's like how all this stuff works. And I'm going to let one of the other JavaScript instructors do that, mostly because they understand a lot better than I do. I've learned to write software kind of from intuition, and I don't really have the experience in the stuff that I really should, given I'm a professional software developer. That's neither here nor there. Set timeout though. It's a function, so I'm going to give it a function just like so you probably noticed something kind of similar to this and that thing we had before. In both cases, we've got a function passed to, like there's a function that's being passed as a value to this function. So like with then we had then we had then and we gave it a function. Here we've got set timeout, we gave it a function. Difference here though is we have seconds. This isn't all the way to making an HTTP request. It's just like JavaScript stuff. Found extender. Take note of what happens. Let's talk about that for a minute. Enter now, and now we need to log. So do not have took a second.
Yeah.
So the reason why it took a second is you have 2,000 here. This means 2 seconds or 2,000 milliseconds. Call this function.
SRC.
It's a sort of way you can delay the execution of something. This here is kind of the thing that's important to realize here. If I have
Well, usually there's fault as well.
something like this, just reading top to bottom, you'd probably think that it would log out test, it would log out log here. Well, the function actually has to get log here, and then I get a test. The reason why is so just working top to bottom, you know what we do. Call this a timeout function. What it does is it says, okay, in 2 seconds, I'm gonna call this function. So it kind of stores that away for later, like keeps on the back burner. And this keeps on going. And it's like, oh, I'm gonna run log here and just keep on going after that. So it logs out log here. And then it kind of waits in the background. After 2 seconds to have elapsed, it then calls that function, it picks up, and then it runs. So this part makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Think about the way that conventional then is it's very similar. But different things. There's fixed duration here. This duration is determined by how long it takes the server to come back into function. Is that helpful?
So that's the same. Let's wait for and then in order to function.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got that part.
Okay. So given this, the only last little piece that this part doesn't class is the promises. We have this argument, yes, the function. And effectively, this is the value where we set timeout. There's not really a value to get after it. Like just call the function in 2 seconds and that's it. There's a promise. You have a value you convert. So like you have if your token, you're going to convert to the actual thing. And that's just going on here. So this A here is like your token. And then the data here is the thing you get back. It's like the actual value that token is turned into. Like what the server gave you back. Well, this is like the placeholder. It's like this thing. This value will come later. I don't know when it will come. So it's like it's like this is the guy that's actually on. It's called after that summer half that happens. That delay. Yeah.
I know that was a bad motion. Wasn't good.
So I used to do a little better.
Yeah.
I would say do it a couple of times, play around. If you want to chat more about it,
But it is.
kind of crazy. I'm going to do a little lesson on thoughts. It's just I think it's something that everyone needs to know. The micro-example, don't worry about it. It's more of a bonus. It's not really a module 5 thing because I think it's the first time you guys communicate contact.
I don't know if we should do that.
Yeah.
So,
And that poor woman, she's in a good paragraph.
yeah, I have some
Trying so
about
hard.
that. They're like blog posts.
Yeah.
So it might be worth
All her good work. It's very long. And I go and my son too.
yes, and GitHub documents.
And I always feel bad.
Just the very bottom. Also, just
And then she was doing it all the way
how
out.
this whole like I send out GitHub documents is like. Should I use a Google Classroom more? Like, is it what you guys are used to?
Well, now I'm getting used to like our before was more to the classroom, but I've kind of, like my whole steps are kind of getting used to it. So I'm using that more and more. So I don't use GitHub.
Yeah, we need to get this.
Okay. Okay, so maybe I'll start trying to take like in the classroom. Just feel it. Okay, that's good enough. Yes.
How you
guys doing? I think I might jump into
When I would walk in, I'm doing defensive anyway, so I have this.
Yeah.
So, but I, so you can add JavaScript into your tag, but like, how do you write that?
In dev tools?
Yeah,
It's hard. Like,
because I couldn't get it for like,
it's hard, and I would recommend
well, you know
against
what
doing
I'm
that.
okay, so how do you do that?
Well, just as a preface, the way you actually would do it, you can right click
Oh,
and
you
you
can
go,
just do
edit as
edit in
HTML
and then
type in
add
there.
it in there.
Yeah, the problem is
Okay.
if you do that, it's going, this is an about blank. So
Yeah,
it's like you
it's gonna
reload
go
it, and it's
away.
gonna go away.
Right.
So I'd recommend making an HTML file somewhere and
Just make it.
yeah, and then just double click on it. You can go to just the file you
I didn't
want.
know she wanted us, because I made the elements of JavaScript. Then that's
Oh,
what you wanted.
no,
us to
you don't
do.
need to do that. I mean,
Like,
you
oh,
can if you
this-
want to, but
it's
like,
fine, but-
you don't have to.
I don't
Okay.
quite understand what we're getting at in that one either.
Okay.
When you do a script element, it doesn't, it,
Almost a
you
bit
can
of a
write
stretch.
JavaScript inside the script element itself.
Oh, have you guys not talked about that?
No, what?
You
You
guys,
use the HTML?
Yeah.
used like a script tag. and
It's like
text
using,
directly
it's like
in the
using a
script tag.
style tag in HTML, you can just write CSS within the style tag.
And you're going to,
So how typically
Well-
do you use JavaScript?
we didn't really much. I mean, we did it in the chip calculator project.
Okay,
Like,
fine.
we did like that and just linked it, I mean, I linked it to a style. Is that like in
Okay.
something?
Yes.
No, you're,
And then I put the code over
It's
here.
okay, I get the general idea.
yeah, so you're,
I did that.
what I said in the document assumed you had some knowledge, I didn't realize you.
Oh, okay, all right,
But that's fine. So what you did there is pretty close to what we'll work to.
okay.
So what I was, just so you kind of know what I was trying to get at. If you have a script tag in here,
Yeah.
you can actually type JavaScript inside of here, like I can do like console.log, something like that.
Yeah.
And I can save it, and if I go back to the browser and reload it.
Oh,
So it's a way you can enter JavaScript directly in the page. It's
Oh,
kind of
okay.
nice to play around with.
all right.
But what we did here, just including the script tag, or including the script externally, that works just as well. So
Okay.
you do whatever you're comfortable with.
But it didn't do anything.
Yeah, so the reason why I didn't do anything is the link tag.
Yeah.
That's only used for CSS, it's not used for JavaScript. Yeah, it's really confusing.
I forget now, so what do we use?
So what do you want to do? You actually want to use the script tag.
Oh, is that what you mean? Oh, that makes sense.
You have to use a script tag and you give it an attribute SRC and you give it the script
source.
file. Yeah.
So, oh, but I would do it down there.
You down there in the body, yeah. In general, this is gonna part of that tool, but or this is the rule is always true, but in general, you want to have your JavaScript always in body. In general.
Okay, so wait a minute.
I say that because people in this room are probably listening to something I'm wrong, like my coworkers. But in general.
So I put this in there.
Yeah, you can do that.
But don't you want to link it towards the end of the body, not the beginning? Because if it
Yeah.
errors, then it's gonna fuck the whole page.
Yeah, so if you do it, the other,
I'm live too. That's fine.
the other thing too is that the script text, the end of the page doesn't run after all the DOM's been rendered.
Yeah.
Or if it's the beginning, it won't necessarily.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, because it won't know what you're referencing, right?
Yeah, so if you have something like document get element by ID or something, and that element's underneath your script tag, you run into problems.
Yeah. Because be like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Oh, that's just scroll up. You got that.
Oh. So wait a minute, I could have left it in here and just put the index.js.
You could have done
That was
something.
first.
Actually, first let's just see this work, just so that you can.
Okay.
I think it should work. Yeah, it works.
Okay, so this is all I.
Yeah. Okay. So you go back over here. We've got our we have our promise here. The login status. We have this other promise, and we log in. So we're waiting for the data to come back. We see the status. We're waiting for the text to be extracted. We see that. So that's all working fine.
That's good.
But,
Okay.
so what you could have done,
Okay.
just you have the same thing here.
Yeah.
Could have done this. Do the exact same.
Okay.
So it's just wherever you want your code to be. If there's some
Okay.
file or inside.
And there's just a matter of personal preference.
Yeah, typically you'll find as stuff gets bigger, you want to be in an external file.
Okay.
And that also means you can have multiple of those. So like you can have one for like all your navbar stuff and one for like all your Twitter stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
What
For our purpose, that was what you wanted.
Yeah. Now there's one last piece to it, and which is kind of optional, which is
Okay.
somehow take some data that you got back from the response and put it in the body.
So this is the data I got as a response,
This is that you got to.
and I want to put this in.
So, okay.
Mind blown, Ryan. All right,
Yeah.
what am I gonna do?
So think back to all that DOM stuff in module 4.
Yeah.
You could do things like create a tag and set the contents of that tag, and append that to the body, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So imagine you did something like take the status.
Mhm.
You took that status, you put it inside of a p tag. So you make a new p tag. You put that, you set the p tag's contents equal to the status. And then you take that p tag and you append it to the body, and effectively add that to the DOM. But what happened is you made an HTTP request, and you caused something to show up on the screen after you made that HTTP request.
Okay.
Does that conceptually make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just can't remember how to do it.
Yeah. Okay. So I would say if you want to give you a couple things
Yeah,
to
that'd be good.
research, look up document.create element, or
Okay.
just write this stuff down somewhere and you can look up document.create element.
Yeah.
And look up maybe like document.body out or just document.body. That's probably for instance that's the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
It does.
Also, if you just look up like Google, how do I add like a p tag to an HTML page, you'll
Okay.
probably find someone who's done
Okay.
this.
All right.
So,
Great.
Yep. Okay. In general, how you guys doing?
Stuff on number 2.
Stuck on number 2? Okay. We'll chat in a moment then. How do you guys feel about promises? Out of everyone I've talked with, that seems to be the biggest sticking point about all this stuff. And I'm not surprised. It's kind of what I expected. I was thinking about shortly here doing a little bit of a lesson on promises. Just kind of talking about more about how they work. As I've talked to a couple people, I've refined my explanation a bit. I realized my initial explanation was maybe not so great. Going back to the whole beer ticket thing, I should not do that. But yeah, so would that be something that'd be helpful for you guys?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I thought your beer ticket analogy was fine.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, that's cool. So I'll help you, Dana, and then we'll chat about chat about that as a class.
If I wanted to do some.
Yeah. You wanted to do the demo.
No, no.
Okay.
Talk to everyone else. I haven't had a chance to check on the computer
All
thing.
right. And so, let's see, what was I doing? I was trying to
That looks good. Yeah, that looks good to me.
that looks good.
Yeah.
And then I'm supposed to hit enter.
Yep, so that will run the thing.
Yeah, that's what I kept doing. It looks like it's right.
Like I used to do it as a
Oh,
12-year-old
I think
until
it's
18.
My mother used to do that after I
I
was.
used to do it all.
Well, so this
They're
is
like,
a
"We're not," I'm
mixture,
like,
as most fun bugs are, it's a mixture between the server's fault.
Okay.
Um,
We used to go to the beach.
And they would just be like,
With this text processing frequency, you have the GitHub page open with all the instructions.
And I was
don't really care if you believe
a very early bloomer to get my garage passed. I was trying to pass
There we go.
12.
Can you scroll up to the first one?
No, that's not right.
Second, sorry. Okay. So if you notice here, we have a method, we have a path, we have a body. Now, the thing that I discovered earlier last week was if you don't give this endpoint a body, you give it like an empty string, it throws an error. And that's just my fault. And I tried to fix it once and I failed. And I just decided it wasn't worth fixing. I didn't want to break it worse for you guys. Which shouldn't be a problem, but somehow I have a habit of doing that stuff and writing this code quickly.
oh, she could
for
talk
this
to
class.
you.
So it's right. So that I guess I'll reveal a little piece to you here, which is you don't have a body as part of this request. So you're making a request to this URL. You're using the method of post, which is correct. But imagine it's as if with cat, you didn't hit the you didn't type the body underneath the headers. You just hit like 2 enters and you're done. And that's it. So what happens is it reads that and it has some problems. And it returns back to you an error. So if you include a body in this request, it should work fine. You know how to do that?
That was.
There's a slide on it in the car.
Yeah. So this is it right here. It
Yeah.
says response.
Ooh, that's really tiny. If you click that guy right there. Yep. And then click reset there. Should make it a little better too. Okay. Actually, let's go up to. I should have touched on that slide. I'll do that later. Yeah, that's. So here's all those parameters you can pass to fetch as a second parameter. You can give it a method of get headers or you can give it a method headers and data. So
But our method is post.
our method's post. And in that example, you don't need any headers, so you don't have to worry about that. But there's some data you have to pass to it. The data is the way you give it that body.
Oh, okay, so this will say data and then the brown box over the, okay, so we don't actually say body here, we say.
No,
data.
it's confusing. It's data, it's not body.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that's,
And the more confusing bit is a couple places that I realized I made typos as in the presentation earlier. So you might run into it saying, oh, it's called body. No, it's called data. I'll fix it after the class.
Okay, all right, so I'll go ahead and paste and change that post and then we don't need a header.
No, so there's no headers for that. And if you remember from that slide I had about the empty states for things, you don't have a headers property, it just means don't include any extra headers.
Yeah, okay, all right, so I'll go ahead and do it. Do I need to get the fetch?
I'd say you can probably modify what you have already there. You probably don't need to copy it over unless you want to.
It's still Thursday.
Let's look at the shortcut.
Command Option I. Do you want to put it in the browser window or do you like it? Okay. You click that little dot right there. And then you click dock side and you pick whichever place you want it. It'll put it.
All right, so let me go back into this. Oh, yeah, okay. Okay, post, and then,
So
don't hit enter.
yeah, so the way that you make new lines in here is you actually should do shift enter.
Okay, all right. So that- I still want to make like all my shortcuts. And then just add this part.
So there's a, look here, you got this object here. You got all these different keys in here, method, headers, and data.
I only need method and data.
You do. Go back to your example. So in here you got that object, you got method
Oh, I
and
have
post.
method. Okay, so
So
I
you
just
just
need to add data.
Exactly.
Oh,
Yeah, you're great.
okay, data, colon, and then quotation marks, and then that here.
So this is typically the way you write some, the JavaScript, a JavaScript object. You have the key and value on that. Doesn't matter. Type whatever phrase you want.
All right.
Oh, it's already a bastardization of the phrase, so. Very close. So I was talking, I forgot who it was, talking to someone over there, and whenever you look at code, you should always see the same number of open things you see of closed things. So we've got open parentheses, and we have open curly braces, you count them. You'll notice you don't have them matching right now.
I mean,
Just missing something before data.
Like, basic application stuff.
So.
I feel like your job, like your skills match or something.
Most of it.
So maybe like a skills section.
Yeah,
I forgot the header sections. Yeah, okay. So you can just pretend those three lines aren't there.
Okay, so this goes with, hold on. That goes with this. This goes with this. Okay.
It's like
Oil that sign stuff down to some.
Yeah,
Like one
so
column of
all you have to do is translate your skills from one context to another context. Like all skills.
I need to get rid of this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I had to do with teaching.
But if you data analysis. Data verification.
Oh, no, it's
Yeah,
gonna work.
but that's what I do with teaching. I take data and then I act based on what the data tells me where
Oh, I see what's up. And this is very insidious and we'd never figure it out. Just because I know this from experience. Take those quotes. Backspace and put another quote in its place.
Oh.
Okay. Try it now.
So I think that's not a real problem.
Right now, it's like.
Oh.
set up for computer, did you
Go back to the presentation.
Match to the specific.
So notice here with each entry in the object, we have key, colon, value, comma, key, colon, value. In this case, the value is the whole thing, comma, value. And the very last one, you don't have a comma. Think of it like a list in English. You have like a list of things with comma separate. So take a look here.
Yeah.
Key, colon, value, oops, there's no commas.
So what was your major, microbiology?
And the last one.
It doesn't need to be. You can put it there if you want, but
I
that's
mean,
not
a couple of sciences.
Try that. to work now. Why'd you get a 500?
Chemistry is not the thing that worked better than physics, which I did not understand.
Well, I love physical chemistry, but I'm not in math.
It's so cool. That's all you have to do is try to learn. I will take the words for that. So I did consider a medical.
Pretty sure it's that. I'm seeing that with other people, but. Oh, maybe this one.
Yeah. If you do choose somebody, you can't run their little track.
I didn't care.
Let's see, okay. Yeah, there we go. Something. Yeah, okay. So it is body.
So how come it didn't show me the results?
Well,
The other exercise.
notice here I did this promise thing. This actually contains the response. This is like, because we put
so-
in that variable.
Okay, so we have the console log
So
promise.
now.
Or promise, yeah, and then you didn't even have to tell me.
So you see there, promise was always a function. That doesn't give you any information. What's that?
Yeah, so,
Well, the reason why, and I'm gonna cut this little short, I'm gonna talk to this talk and it's gonna explain all this to you. This promise is a bit of a special value.
where did you go to see that it gave me the frequencies with the
Oh, to get up there and like take a look at stuff? If you have any error here, it'll bring you.
Yeah, I'll leave you very soon.
Bring you to the network page and highlight the request. Like I saw a little yellow there briefly. And you can click on it. This is what I was talking about.
Oh,
There you can see like the method, status code, all the response header, all like this stuff. Here's the body. This is the error of my poorly written code.
And then here's the response.
50th percentile.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
All right, I have it, thank you.
Yep. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. Still want to talk about promises?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Promises. So, in general, how familiar are you guys with set timeout? Okay, let's do a quick little walkthrough of set timeout. I think that would be, oh, I don't want to trip over that guy.
I mean,
Oh.
is it like the same timeout when your page is trying to load? and
No,
it
it's different than that.
Oh, it's different.
Yeah, let me plug in my computer. You really like it?
It seems cool.
It is very cool.
I mean, not like I have command over it or anything,
You'll get there.
but it seems cool.
You'll get there. Okay. So, oh, and yeah, what's going on here? There we go. Okay. Set timeout. So set timeout is this global function just like fetch. And I'm just going to do a little example to start with, just so you guys see kind of how it works. And then I'm going to dive into exactly what's going on with it. I'm seeming to find, as I explain this to more people, that understanding how this works kind of helps to bridge the gap to promises. So just like with the promise then thing, you give the set timeout function, you give it a function as a parameter. What they call in their list here a handler. So you give it a, oh, I shouldn't type that number yet. I'm getting ahead of myself. You give it a function, and you give it a number. So I'm going to give it 2,000. And inside of this function, I'm going to put some code to run that just will know when it runs so we can see what happens. I'm going to log out test. Now, when I hit enter, what do you think is going to happen? Yeah, okay, so you guys already know what this does. Okay, so I'm gonna hit enter now, and then we're gonna see test. So about 2 seconds. Yeah. Why did it say 12? Why did it say 12? Well, actually, this is probably a good thing you asked that. So set timeout, it actually gives you a return value. So there's a return value from set timeout in addition to it calling this function later on. And you can think of this return value like a like if there's a bunch of people in line, it's like your number that you have. And if you want to do anything with this set timeout action later on, like maybe you want to cancel it, is kind of the classic example. A great thing you can do, you have this number, and you can now use this as kind of the reference to set timeout. So if for example, let's say I'm going to give this a much longer value, like 20 seconds. I'm going to store this thing in I'm just going to call it handle. And now it's not running yet. It's still got 20 seconds to go. But if I go, I think it's clear timeout, I pass handle to it, now effectively canceled that timeout from happening. Like it's never going to happen in the future. Now, you might think like, okay, whatever, that's not all that important. But the reason why I'm glad you asked that question is that actually kind of bridges a gap to promises. You can think of this handle as kind of similar to a promise, in that it's a value you get back for an action that hasn't completed yet. It's something that's still in progress. And later on, you can use this handle. In this case, it's just a number, but you can use this value as a way of doing things on that action later on. So we've created this set timeout. We've got back this handle thing. We can do something like cancel a timeout, or we can do something like that's really the only great thing you can do with timeouts, because they're not all that flexible. But if you extrapolate this to other concepts, you can think of like you can perform other actions on that concept. And first of all, that makes sense? You can imagine, kinda?
Yeah.
Okay. If it doesn't, hopefully it will make a little more sense as we go here. But let's talk about maybe this more in the context of a promise, because this is kind of a rough example, and you guys kind of already know about set timeout. So I'm going to make actually, I'm going to make set timeout as a promise instead. Ignore this first line I'm typing. It's just so that this is going to work. This demo is going to work, right? But we'll talk about it later if you guys feel comfortable enough with how these work. I think that's going to work. Let's see. OK, so what I just did, and sorry I cleared it. I should have kept it up on the screen. Is I defined a function called timeout, just in a variable, just like you would with any other function. So this isn't a function that's available on every page, just something I made just because I want to do this demonstration. So timeout's a function. Timeout works just like set timeout. This function I made. In fact, it uses set timeout under the hood. You can see in there it's got set timeout. Oh, not that. It's got set timeout inside of it. When I call timeout, timeout's a function and it accepts one parameter, a delay amount. So let's see what happens when I call timeout with like 2000. I get back a promise. Think of this promise just like that number you got back from set timeout. It allows us to do things to that timeout or to that thing that's in progress. So this timeout here, 2000, we've got our promise pending. That's all cool. Let's, instead of printing it out, let's store it to something. Let's call it promise, because it's a promise. We're going to store that into promise. But we've still got this promise thing. It's just in this promise variable now. Now, this is kind of, I feel like, the little bit of the logical leap that some of you may not have quite gotten to yet. And I'm hoping we can get through this here. But the promise, just like we could do something where we cancel the timeout, you can do something similar with the promise. Well, kind of similar, where you can perform an action on that promise value. In the case of this promise, instead of canceling it, we're going to effectively take that callback that was in set timeout, this guy here, and we're going to attach it after the fact. So if you notice, when I created the timeout here, I didn't pass this callback in. Effectively, I started up, I said, in 2 seconds, do something, but I haven't told it what to do yet. Now, I'm going to attach that callback to the promise and effectively let that run. Like, that will give that callback to it to run after it's done, or in promise terms, after it's resolved. That's what it means when it's completed. So go promise.then. That's how you effectively do stuff on that promise, how you attach that callback to it. And I'm going to give it that callback function in here. I'm going to log out test again. Now, it runs immediately, which isn't all that great. I'll run them in line so you can see it better. But the reason why it runs immediately is it's been 2 seconds, over 2 seconds since I ran this first line. So it's done. It's like, OK, we're ready to run your function. But we don't have anything to run yet. And now you give it the function. It says, OK, I'm going to run it immediately because you just gave it to me. So I'm going to now instead put all this stuff in one line here, or in one like thing to run at the same time. So I'm going to go promise.then. That. So this is the exact same thing we did before. It's just I'm going to run them both at the same time. And if I hit enter, you should notice it's the exact same thing as a set timeout example. So wait 2 seconds, we get our test. And the reason why is with this, we have this timeout, and we're waiting 2 seconds, and then it's going to, well, OK. We make this new promise. We attach the callback to the promise, and then 2 seconds later, it then calls that callback. It calls that function. Does that make sense?
Is the delay between the promise and the console log?
The delay is between.
Where is the delay?
The delay is between calling this function to create the promise and it calling this function inside of the then of the promise. Okay. And if let's see. Actually, say that one more time.
Well, I guess it's like the bad example, but our promise is how we get our ticket, and then
Yeah.
promise that then we're going to get our beer.
Exactly. Yeah, so think as the then is the way you convert that promise for getting beer, that ticket you've bought, into the actual glass of beer.
So the delay is with the ticket, or the delay is with getting the beer?
The delay is with getting the beer.
Yeah, between the ticket and the beer.
Mm-hmm. So, OK, I'm going to take this example and extend it a little bit further. Now, with this example here, we are just calling code after some amount of time. We're not really getting a value. Now, that's the other piece where this fetch stuff becomes a little more complicated. And I'm given that this is the first time you guys are seeing promises, I very much expected for there to be some confusion around that in fetch. And like the way fetch uses promises is a little bit more on the advanced side. And I feel like I probably should have gotten you guys up a little further before we got into that. But anyway, this promise here, this is not giving you a value when you resolve it. So you notice how this function here doesn't have any parameters in it. Part of the power of promises, though, is not just that it can call a function for you when the promise is resolved. It's also that the promise can contain a value. The promise can contain something. Then it can give it to you when the function inside of the then is called. So maybe let's break that down to a little bit more of an example here. I'm going to modify my timeout function, which is you guys don't need to be concerned with. And I'm going to give it a value parameter. I think something like that should work. Oh. Let me reload my page. There we go. OK. So I just added a functionality to my timeout function here. Now my timeout function takes 2 parameters. The first one is the same as it was before the delay. So 2000, that's fine. The second is a value. So this value is the thing that I'm going to give to the promise that it's going to be inside of it. And when then the function inside of the then is called, the function's going to get that value inside of it. Now, you might bring up like, well, why would you give it into timeout? Why wouldn't you just like have it in like a variable and just have the function inside of it access that variable and not have to like go through the promise? And I realize that this might be a little weird right now, but the reasons will become clear in a second. But just take my word for it. This is the way that often you have to do it, where you need to pass a value into the promise like this. So I'm just going to say this will be inside the promise. I'm going to put this into a variable again. Oh. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to do the same sort of thing. We're going to attach that function to the promise. The promise.then function. I'm just going to autocomplete there. And I'm going to now put inside here value. I'm going to give it a parameter. And instead of logging out test, I'm going to log out that value. And probably, as you guessed, you get this will be inside the promise. So the key thing to understand about promises, at least at this point, the key thing you need to understand is there are two types of promises. There are promises that are in progress, and there are promises that have completed. And then a promise can contain a value. So a promise can contain could contain a string and not be completed, and then transition to be completed. And once it's completed, it'll call your function that you've put inside of the then. Does that part make sense?
So it doing its thing for however long you say, and then when it's done, it gives you the value.
Yes.
So that's how you know it's done.
Yes. And it will call this the function inside of the then you've attached on the promise to tell you that value, you have that value.
Wait a second.
Okay.
Okay, so it tells you have that value by returning the value.
It tells you have that value by calling the function inside of the then here.
Okay.
So there's the return value from promise.then is irrelevant. The important piece is that there's a function inside of the .then here, this guy here, and that's called. The value that's important is passed into that function. So the reason why you can't do something like this. Oh, let me bring this back up to the top. Sorry. Why you can't do something like this. Promise.then, like this sort of thing. Because that's probably what you'd expect, like just return me the value like that. The reason why is something like set timeout, if you remember, there was that callback that was involved. There was that function that was passed to it. And the reason why is because this is something that's being run in the future. It's not being run right now. If it was being run right now, like you just had a function where it was like you want to add two numbers or something that's trivial that can be done in real time, that's different. That it makes total sense to return it because you had like it's the easiest way to get values out of the function. But with this, the function that the value you're going to get is future. It's a value that's going to happen in the future. You can't return something that hasn't happened yet. Well, you can by using a promise. It's kind of the way you get around that problem. Instead of having a function you pass to the thing, you return a value and you attach a function to that value. So that value kind of acts as like, I hate to say it, but a promise of a future value. It's like it's a placeholder, yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully that made some more sense. So the kind of the last piece here to bridge us into fetch is we've been doing this with set timeout so far, and that's fine. But the fetch piece is that imagine instead of doing this asynchronous timeout where like you're waiting a fixed amount, swap that out with a request to a server or a request response. So you call fetch. Well, lots of work random calls in here. Okay, those aren't interesting. I'm going to do module5.tk. Good old fruit. So we're going to call this function. And just like before with our set timeout, we're going to get a promise. If I type it, you can believe me. So we're going to get a promise. Now, that promise, just like with the set timeout, is a promise of a future value. It's a placeholder. It's something that hasn't happened yet. We've sent data to the server. They haven't responded to us. Effectively, if you think of the netcat example, you've typed all your stuff in. You've hit enter. You've still got a blank screen. You're waiting for the data to be sent back over the socket back to you. So because you don't know how long that's going to take, you can't return it. Like you have to somehow, just like the set timeout, it's something that's going to happen in the future. It's not defined how long it's going to take. So with this here, we now have our promise. We can, just like with the set timeout example, attach a then to it. So I'm going to go promise.then, and I'm going to go. I'm just going to log out test. just like that. And that works fine. I mean, it's the same thing we did with the set timeout where I'm running it afterwards, and it goes immediately because it's finished a long time ago, and now I register it, and then it immediately runs the function. So just to make it a little bit more clear, let me run these both together so you can kind of see it in its entirety here. So if you notice there, that test took a split second of time to come. Okay, it cached it, so it's not going to be quite as good again. But this function inside of the then is being called when the response occurs. Okay, one last little piece. We're getting to the top of the ladder here. So the last little piece is that right now we can log a message when the response is complete, but we don't have the response. Like we can't get the status code or anything like that. So how do you do that? Well, just like with that value thing you were talking about before, where you could pass a value into the timeout and the value would come back in the promise. It turns out fetch, the value inside of its promise, is the response. So I can put response here. And now, when I do that, I get back this response object. And this has all the data from the response in it. So think of this just like that string I typed, like this will be returned by the promise, or whatever I typed back with the timeout thing. Similar kind of idea. It's a value inside of the promise, and it's generated by fetch. And it's like, once the promise is resolved, that's accessible. And once the way you access that value is by attaching the function with the .then, like we did here, because that function is going to run in the future, so we can't return that because we don't have it yet when we return it. Is that better? I imagine it's still somewhat confusing, but hopefully that it provides at least a little more clarification. Say that again? A little more review. Okay, good. Okay. I guess, how have you guys been doing on the exercises? Okay. Got through them all? Got through most of them?
No.
Okay.
A few.
Yeah, we're going to chat afterwards. Okay. So I actually was wondering if it makes sense for me to, well, maybe I'll present it, but I don't know if I necessarily want to have you guys really start on it yet because there's some stuff that you don't know yet. I have the final project for the end of this class. I figured I should introduce it, show you where the document is about it, and you can start looking at it. Okay. So I'll post it in Slack. It is, also, I'm going to try to start using Google Classroom more. Like, I'm just bad at that, but it sounds like you guys might benefit from that. I'm used to just throwing GitHub links everywhere at work, so it's the workflow I'm used to. But we should do things that are make it easier for you guys. Final exercise.
Or you can put it in the Slack, CIC student resources. Yeah. That was public resources.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that.
I don't know. I just thought that.
I'll just post it in both.
I mean, I think I just wish we could one, just always use the one.
Yeah, that was kind of my idea.
You're talking about just one central, the assignments and resources.
I'm more talking about the assignments.
No, the assignments are usually in Google Classroom.
Yeah, I haven't been doing that. And I'm saying I probably should be doing that.
For them there because that's where they've been.
Yeah, so I should be following what other people are doing. It's just I'm not used to it.
I mean, it doesn't hurt to put it other places, but.
Okay. I'll put it in both places then. I'll post it in Slack. I'll also put it in Google Classroom too, maybe like the morning before the class. Typically, I do my preparation in the morning before work. So, okay, cool. So I linked that final exercise. I would say don't, there's some stuff in here you're not going to know yet, but probably by middle to the end of this week, you should be able to pretty much do this completely. I would say maybe a place to start is the example that I showed at the beginning of class was like that. It makes a request to the New York Times, and it gets back a list of all their books. We render that to the screen. So a good place to start, maybe you have to get an API token from the New York Times. If you have a moment and want to give that a try, go for it. If you need help with that, let me know. But in general, it should be pretty self-explanatory. You have to make an account and stuff, but it's pretty easy. So I gave you a link to get started on that. And if you want to keep going after that, go for it. But if you're also kind of confused and want to do some more practice on this promise stuff and with fetch, that's totally fine too. I'm more just providing this because some people I can tell are maybe want a little bit more to keep them busy right now. But if yeah, it's not a big deal if that's not where you are yet. So anyway, if you have any more questions about promises, flag me down. Yeah, that's about it. Yep. So how did that go? Did that have explanation help you? Okay.
And I think it's just because.
Today. Friends went to college, but it was a memorial service. I'm sorry. Yeah, actually, yeah.
Try to make people more interested in your class. But given that you were asking about that last week, some of the stuff I was talking about kind of solidify that for you. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Talking about headers. Yeah.
I'm gonna go tomorrow to Katie.
Okay. I didn't realize that she lives in like Potsdam. Right. That's like hours away.
Okay.
Yeah. So she like, yeah, I feel, I don't know, she just makes the commute, I guess. But.
Sure. Yep. I'll go through it and be prepared.
Yeah. You're looking way ahead right there.
What that's called?
Oh no, it's my presentation.
Oh,
And caching.
yeah.
JSON, yes, this is this whole week.
Send me over.
It's tomorrow too.
What I thought is maybe
Yeah,
it's
this stuff right here. This is that.
trying to talk to a server flow.
Yeah.
Or maybe after,
So
like I
you
went,
would,
I could probably build in something that says, like when you know how you get those timeout errors.
okay, so we can work on like.
I'm guessing that that's probably where those come from. Set time to say, hey, this is perfect, and that's probably accurate, or like maybe pull the data. Instead of telling your code that you have to.
Now this one is unfortunately not going to give you a great response. It's going to give you back the 500, I think.
Just go
Maybe. Maybe.
Or
Or no, it's not going to back a 500. For some reason, the password still does not get that. But you still got a response. It's still worthwhile doing it, but
I don't know.
it's not going to be quite as good as
So if you don't tell it, hey, this response.
So what we do
But
is
you have to wait code, then it's just gonna keep going and then something else is gonna break something.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm.
That sounds good.
Control L.
I feel like I'm not the only one making.
Oh,
But request to the server, right?
Right.
Millions of us.
We all ask at some point to say,
So,
you just, did they get you?
Thank you. It's cold out today.
It got cold.
Yeah, it was
So-
nice earlier.
as far as this
It was
goes,
really
that. Here. So the method on that one was.
That was fun. It was awesome. I loved it. It's over.
I feel like so far it has something.
Either password or something else to address for everybody, right? Like there was
Yeah.
and password is-
Yeah.
So. No problem. So what we were doing was we set up a fire, the bar, sequence, fetch, and then we put in the module 5 TK.
Yep.
All right, so let me actually go to that page. And we close that up and just hit enter, right? It'll
Go for it. I want to work through this. I think it'll.
comma. And then curly braces. No, you're okay. You're doing okay.
So
Method is get. Space, value. Inside quotes.
Yep.
Quote, and then comma. And then this doesn't have a body, this has headers. Now, I know we were working on this one time when you said to put in something, you had to hit enter twice. But I don't know if that applies to this.
no, so that's with the netcat.
Okay,
stuff,
then.
where you have to
Okay.
do the 2 enters to signify the body.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's different.
Okay, so here we just actually type body.
Yeah, you do.
So body, colon. And then inside quotes would be.
There is no body.
There's no body. Okay, so we just have header.
Yeah, so if there's no body, you can do one of two things. You can either just put an empty string there, or you can just leave the body out altogether.
Or some of the body out.
That works fine.
So how do we begin to work on the header information? Because you have a
Yeah.
header name.
So I guess, how familiar are you with JavaScript objects?
I was probably absent during that class. I know
Okay.
that objects contains a collection of values.
Yeah. So I would say let's do a quick little walkthrough of those, just because I think understanding that would help you a little bit. through it.
All right.
So let's open up DevTools over here. So a JavaScript object is well, actually, maybe to step back. You're familiar with arrays?
Yeah.
Okay. So an array is just a series of values.
And then those values get passed.
They're yeah. So you could set this all equal to a variable, and you could like do something with this. You could maybe like put it into a function, or you could maybe get like an item from it, like the first item from it. An object is a little different. So where an array, you see where the thing you refer to each value by is the index of it. So the first one here is 0, the second one is 1, this one's 2. Like it's, or maybe to make it a little less confusing, they're numbers.
That's not confusing because we've covered it a lot.
Okay, cool, cool.
0, 1, 2.
Yeah, okay. So the difference here being an object is instead in curly braces. And what this means, it means instead of having an index, you're referring it just by an arbitrary thing. So it could be a string, it could be a number, it could be null, it could be whatever you want.
Okay.
So if let's say I did something where what's a good example here of like maybe colors.
Oh, did you send that?
Oh,